Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here.
And Blue Dragon 5.
And Sandy Claus.
And Jacob Wild, too.
And golly gee, oh my. We are here to talk about one of the big bucket list things for the channel, folks. We are going through the entire Sam Raimi trilogy, movie by movie. We're doing it as 3 individual podcasts leading up to Spider-Man Far From Home. So this is big because I feel like all 4 of us in this room adore these movies on different levels, and we grew up with them, and they're just like total nostalgia bombs. And it's also going to be really fun revisiting them. For example, I didn't even revisit this one because I'm so familiar with it, guys. This is like the superhero movie that I've watched the most out of anything. Like, I had it I have it as ingrained in my mind as any Disney movie. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But Spider-Man 2, I'm definitely going to give a rewatch to just to see if it's still got that greatest of all time factor going on. And then Spider-Man 3, I've only seen like maybe 4 times. So, you know, I'll definitely have to give that another shot. Maybe it'll be good this time, guys.
Hey, I mean, I like it. I've always liked it.
Right.
Yeah, maybe.
So we're getting into the original 2002 Spider-Man.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I'm going to hit you with a dose of nostalgia, all right?
All right.
So it was in the summer of 2000 when I went to go see X-Men in theaters. And I saw in the lobby of my movie theater the biggest poster that I had ever seen. It was a big, like, full-sized wall spread. And you know what that poster was, guys?
What was that poster?
It was this.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget this. This still sticks with me. I actually kind of got a little bit of deja vu remembering this specific detail, guys. The date on the poster said 2002. It was only 2000. This movie was 2 years off. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, that, like, it clearly that's never gonna, because as a little kid, time moves so much slower, right? Like, 2 years just feels like forever. And I was just like, oh man, like, that's never gonna come. Like, I'm never actually gonna see that movie. But man, when eventually it does roll around and I do see the movie, it's just going to be the most amazing thing ever, because this might be one of the best posters ever conceived for a movie. I mean, it's just like, it really tells you all you need to know about the scale, about what they're going for, about how close to the character they're going. I mean, I love this poster so much.
Yeah, it is great.
And upon my anticipation for the movie, I picked up several collected volumes of the Spider-Man comics along the way. Of course, the Marvel Essentials being one of them. Dragon, you're familiar with the Marvel Essentials, I assume.
Yeah.
And of course, as you know, probably the big drawback to the Marvel Essentials is the fact that no color.
Yeah, they're kind of like nowadays. I think sometimes there's an omnibus and there's an essential, and essentials are basically the way they kind of collect. That's how you get to read. Back in the olden days, especially, you're able to read through. They still put them out. I think they still put out new ones of it. Basically, you can read all the original, like up to issue up to the first appearance onward. You can read for all sorts of comic characters. They're really big for the Marvel characters. I don't know if they do. I guess they do omnibus for the DC characters. They do essentials for plumb near everything else with Marvel. It's just like Daredevil, Spider-Man, the X-Men, you name it. They're all essentials.
I remember that's how I got into Ant-Man, was reading an Ant-Man Essentials.
It's a bang for your buck, but again, drawback, sans the color.
Okay, well, you know what does have color, guys?
Yes.
Boom! Benefits of working at a thrift store. You
Nice.
literally find the exact same mother effing book that you had as a kid that got you into Spider-Man to begin with.
Nice.
Same one.
That's beautifully worn too. I mean,
Full color. Full
Ah.
color. Look at that. Look at that. Oh
Nice.
man. You guys have no idea how happy I was when I found this at work. I just yeah.
That's great.
I mean, it's just like, how appropriate is that? How appropriate is that right before we do the Raimi retrospectives, I find this. It's fate, guys. It's fate. So yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Who wants to go next?
We're just sharing
Wait,
our.
hold on. I guess that was my nostalgia. I guess I should actually share my thesis on the movie.
Okay.
I mean, it's super nostalgic and I love it, and it's honestly, I'm kind of in the Jenny Nicholson camp of like, well, Spider-Man 2 might be technically the superior movie for sure. I'm definitely not going to argue that. I honestly think Spider-Man 1 might be my sentimental favorite because it came first. It just totally set the groundwork. There was nothing like it that ever existed. I mean, it's like, this to me is like, this is my Richard Donner Superman. That's my thesis. It's like I have nothing more to say than that. This is my Donner Superman. I adored this movie that much. It's like, to a generation that grew up in the 70s with Superman, I grew up in the 2000s, in the 90s and the 2000s. The 2000s is like a tween going forward. Watching these Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. And man, it's of course, as we'll get into the series, 2 being a kind of a masterclass in storytelling that kind of maybe is a little bit more self-serious than the first one. 3 going back to the goofy tone of the first one, but maybe not as good. Obviously not as good, not even maybe. But I don't know. I really think that all the ingredients are here. Like I said, 2 is definitely the superior film. But I feel like in terms of just overall like popcorn, like there's something special about this first one. There really is.
Yeah,
and
the first one is the story is just perfect. It doesn't miss a beat.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that Willem Dafoe, of course, has a lot to do with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So all right, who wants to go next?
Well, I'll go next.
Okay.
Should I share my sentimental attachment to this, or just my overall thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think you just maybe try and condense it a little bit more than I did. I apologize. Okay. I just had that prop I wanted to work in, but
all right. Well, I'll give a little of both then.
Yeah,
because I definitely have a history with this as well. I probably first watched this when I was about 7 or 6 years old at my friend's house, and I was just completely floored by it. I got the DVD. I got the toys. I watched it every day. I loved watching the parade scene. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. I thought just the effects. I wondered how they got the Willem Dafoe to fly around in the glider. It's especially with scenes like in the fire, the burning building fight. The effects in that look really, really good too. This really opened my mind to what effects, like how effects can trick you in cinema. I'm still just mind blown by this movie, just how it can, how it did that at such an early age. But just to spin off what you were talking about earlier, Tiki, this movie is it's the perfect popcorn movie. The story is perfect. The characters are really well developed. The acting is really, really great for the type of movie that it is. The performances can get pretty hokey, but in
a good way.
In a good way, and that brings out the best in everything else. It suits it perfectly. It's a gem of a movie. I wouldn't go as far as say it's a masterpiece, but it's definitely just an undisputed gem of a movie.
All right, you know what? I want to build to Dragon, so why don't we get Jacob next?
Okay, I mean, for the longest time, I had no interest in superheroes, and for a long time, and believe it or not, for the longest time, I was even scared of Spider-Man.
Oh, God.
Yes, I mean, I wasn't very exposed to. I wasn't exposed to much when I was younger. but but one day I saw that I was over at my cousin's house and I saw saw the movie on VHS and I decided to give it a. They told me you'll like it, so I decided to give it a shot. It was at that time when I was at that age the longest movie I ever watched at that point. So, and I can definitely say this movie definitely generated my interest in superheroes as a whole. Basically, introduced me to a whole new world of possibilities and concepts and stuff that I'd never even imagined. This movie just, as in, and as you can, and basically it led me to a whole lot of other areas and basically expanded my horizons in a way. Basically, this opened a whole new chapter in my appreciation of filmmaking and all kinds of stuff. Like, as as some people famously said with other movies, I was wowed by it. I mean, maybe it's because I was so young at the time when I watched it. I mean, maybe. But even watching it again, I still think it really holds up. It's a great, like I said, honestly, obviously I'm in the camp that thinks that Spider-Man 2 was the best of the trilogy. But this one is definitely, I wouldn't say this one is bad by any means. As it definitely has its own unique charm, its own sense of humor. Like it has basically the right amount of camp with the right amount of seriousness. I think it has a tight balancing act, but it balances very well, and it's a very well made, very fun and exciting movie.
And if I could just say one more thing too, I think that I was talking about this. I think it was before we went on air, but the promotional stuff to go along with this movie, all the toys and things, it was huge. There was so much of it, and they did a really great job. The action figures, I've collected a whole bunch of action figures and cardboard cutouts and stuff. I've actually got a big goblin cutout of on my computer right now. I love this movie. The toys and everything, they're such quality. I just love it all. It's really great.
Dragon?
Hey, well, just to speak to Spider-Man for a second, I remember actually, I'm pretty sure the first comic I ever got was a Spider-Man comic. Pretty sure. Was Maximum Carnage. The first, it wasn't the first Maximum Carnage, but it was like one of the issues within the, I believe it was 11 or 12 issues. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was like plumb in the middle there. It's either 7 or 9, I think. Anyway, so that was my first. This is my first comic, along with that, and of course with kind of like 100 other people, a little bit of Death of Superman in there. Point being, and of course, years later, I mean, the first regular comic series I would ever pick up are Spider-Man. This day, even if Spider-Man's not like, even if the story's not that good, I'm like contractually obligated. I have to get Amazing Spider-Man because I'm that hooked on it. Because I owe him. I do. And as silly as it sounds, I mean, again, the character made that much of an impact. He was, honestly, when I think of just kind of comics as a medium, many a time I'm just thinking of like kind of like storytelling in panels 101. It's got to go to Spider-Man. In terms of like kind of the poster boy of Marvel Comics, it's Amazing Spider-Man. It's kind of the Mickey Mouse, Walt Disney thing, Stan Lee, Spider-Man. Just it goes hand in hand. Again, all of Marvel was kind of represented to me by Spider-Man. I mean, again, it's nothing's ever going to knock Batman off the pedestal because Batman was there first at the animated series, but it was again, in terms of still my all-time favorite heroes. You got Batman on the side of DC, you got Spider-Man on the side of Marvel. As much as I love Deadpool, not a hero. So that's how that one goes. But I tell you, so
Spider-Man over Cap.
I mean, remember, I love the MCU Cap. Don't get me wrong, but that's
in terms of comics.
Yeah, if we're talking, I'm just saying like all time. I mean, it's like any which way Spider-Man. I mean, that's the thing. That's like the only way. That's the thing. I love MCU Cap is what I live and breathe for. Being
Technically, Spider-Man once did team up with Deadpool for a bit.
He did, and again, that series I believe came to an end recently. End in the loose sense of like they're just going to rebrand it a few months later. Just give it time. It's what's going to happen. But of course, those two characters somewhat joined at the hip. The assassin who looks remarkably like Spider-Man. But anyway, getting back on points. I mean, nostalgically, in regards to this movie, I mean, for me, nostalgically, again, aside from just kind of like my history with kind of identifying comics with Spider-Man, I mean, the real the best of Spider-Man for me at the time was I had Spider-Man the animated series, the Fox show, the original, the one from the '94, I believe. That one was that was a big one for me. And that's kind of how I got introduced to all the various kind of villains in the rogues gallery of Spider-Man outside of just kind of stuff I've kind of seen in Maximum Carnage and just vice versa. And getting a sense for kind of like the stories being adapted in some way, shape, or form, and mainly the early stuff in the Spider-Man animated series. I mean, pretty much I'm probably have gone through the whole thing just in reruns, getting to the end of that. But again, the only other thing that really kind of was Spider-Man leaping off the page. You had the animated series, and you had this movie. And again, two really excellent introductions to the character. I feel again, the animated series is far from perfect, and well, to an extent, neither is the first movie. They're both. The first movie, though, again, that's how we look at it now. But at the time, you're blown away by it. You're frothing in the mouth just seeing this character swing for the first time. Like I will never have what people in the '70s had with Superman flying. You will believe a man can fly. Again, that in itself is impressive. But you will believe that again, like a simple thing that we've seen, like people swing on.
I don't know. I think the Spider-Man thing is that for us, man. I really do. I mean, to me, I feel like the Spider-Man thing is like even more technically impressive because there's more aerobic, aerobatics involved.
You'll believe a man can swing.
Exactly, and think about how remarkable that is. Because again, you'd think it'd be remarkably simple because Tarzan swung. It's like it's very simple when you think about it. But no, to do it the way Spider-Man does, and again, to get the dexterity of movement and believe someone is kind of swinging on webs without wires. That somebody is just kind of like generating this and being able to kind of glide through the air. Again, it's even more. Again, it sounds simpler, but it's really not. And in regards to my thesis, looking back on Spider-Man for what we're doing here, I mean, look, this series is the Marvel, I think we're all kind of simpatico on for the most part. This series is the Marvel equivalent to the Christopher Reeve Superman films, and even Raimi has admitted this in terms of like I don't just say Donner. I mean, again, ipso facto, the first two movies especially, those are Donner films, absolutely, in the best of ways, absolutely. But in the grand scheme of things, the way the third one
is Superman 3.
That's what I was getting at, but not directed by Donner, hence the Chris Reeve of it all. So the point being, you get the Superman 3, again, it's like we lose kind of like, you lose a little something in the DNA and the translation getting around to the third one. We'll get into that when we get there. I don't want to go really too much on that. But again, in focusing on this film, though, this movie brought Spider-Man to screen. And the big implication, the big reason this movie is important, no matter how you feel about it in comparison to the other movies in the trilogy, the reason this movie does have a huge pedigree. The reason this movie is important is that this was the blueprint for the origin story since Superman. Again, like in so many eras of, again, as I think we spoke to when we did the Iron Man commentary, Tiki. Again, you have three eras of superhero. You have the Donner Superman as like the origin movie for the superhero. Then you have this for our generation. Our generation had this. And then you have the Iron Man for the generation that follows us, for the kids and just people jumping on board for superhero movies. That was like the third kind of iteration, like the third era of origin superhero movies, the third blueprint. Even though technically
it was only 6 or 7 years later.
Exactly, but I know it sounds a little silly when you get down to when you crunch the numbers, but again, it feels that way because these are just monolithic giants in how you tell the origin story in a new and just kind of like redefining way. And with this movie, you can feel the love and reverence for Spider-Man.
The other thing I'd add on to that is the Nolan era.
Well, sure. I mean, you have the Nolan era too, and that in terms of how you
the gritty era, if you will.
That almost blends into the Iron Man era to an extent.
I know
that's kind of
complicated when you break down the timeline like
that. I mean, it's kind of mixed in with the Spider-Man and the MCU era.
So glad you guys are tearing apart my little soliloquy here. I just want to point that out, by the way.
All right.
Sorry.
If I could say one more thing, I think the first two of these movies, especially, I think really, for the most part, they use CGI very, very well. For example, when Tobey Maguire or Peter Parker's, when Norman comes into the room and he's looking for Peter Parker and he's up on the ceiling, that's all practical. He's outside and he's underneath a balcony. It's all practical. They wouldn't do that these days. It's all on a green screen or it's all in CGI. And then, of course, they use a lot of CG work in the parade scene. But it doesn't really hold up, but I think still, especially the second one, these movies really use CGI very limitingly. Is that
Sparingly.
a word?
Tastefully.
Sparingly, exactly. And it's as many people have said. I think that's the way CGI should be used.
So if I can piggyback
just
off of that,
another plus for this series. Go ahead, Dragon.
absolutely, just to piggyback off of like the iconic moment just cited there. This movie, it is a novel. Basically, this movie, looking back on it, after everything that we've gotten, still, this movie is a novelty with iconic moments. There's some elements, like I'll fully admit, there are some elements that may not hold up as well, but by the same token, I mean, this movie is so successfully captures the high drama of Spider-Man with such a visual sense of fun. So again, like it compensates for itself and
absolutely
in so many ways. So again, it's like maybe there's not as much substance in the first outing. Again, emphasis on the first. This is like the first bite of the apple, and look how well they did. But regardless of how you feel about it years later, looking back on it, and just given how all the strides and leaps and bounds that we've done in the superhero movie at this point, you look back on this, may not this first movie specifically, some things may not be as up to snuff, but you know what? It's a memorable classic, and you can never take that away from this movie. It's ingrained as Superman is ingrained in the culture.
Yeah, I think this is definitely these two movies especially are, I think, of what I would consider personally modern day classics.
It pretty much set the precedent for not just modern day superhero movies, but this modern day blockbuster, summer blockbuster.
I would definitely, modern day blockbusters for sure. Yeah, I would agree with that.
It pretty much set the precedent for all that. Like, I mean, this is like when, like, this movie pretty much ushered in, like, once again, the era of big name blockbusters being released in the summer.
Uh-huh.
It's like, hey, they released Spider-Man. Why don't we do something like that?
And this movie has so many things going for it. It has the the performances, the excellent casting, the costumes, the effects, and also the music too. Is just it's whole. That's a whole
the music is another level, man.
Yeah,
just, good old Danny Elfman.
Danny Elfman. This is
Danny, go!
Oh, Danny boy.
Arguably some of Danny Elfman's best work.
I would definitely, I would argue that it is his best score, honestly.
Yeah, I think so.
But guys, I think we might be getting a little ahead of ourselves by talking about all the great stuff this movie does. Let's kind of see that through a little naturally. Let's take a look back here. Let's get into how do we get a movie like this?
Alrighty.
Let's look at the background. Like, how the heck Spider-Man getting this first movie made as like one of my favorite stories in all the making of cinema is the making of the Richard Donner Superman movie. So this has a very different but very interesting story all the same. So here's how we get Spider-Man. So way back when. When I say way back when, I mean early '90s. Early '90s, late '80s, early '90s. Canon Films. They've acquired the rights to Spider-Man. And they're trying to capitalize on kind of the superhero boom since the Superman movie and basically the sequel that followed, just kind of trying to compete. Because Canon Films, for those who may not be aware, and there's like this excellent documentary called Electric Boogaloo, the story of Canon Films, which I recommend to everybody. It's maybe not a family-oriented thing, but I recommend it all the same. Point being, Canon Films, these guys, they kind of made films on the cheap, and it was like a company that had no business existing with the choices that they made. They're basically kind of made schlock, but again, it was like kind of like schlock with a budget to it. They just kept hemorrhaging money, and they kept surviving way past when they should have survived. And they had occasional hits, like Death Wish 2 and things that just kind of kept them on the line. And we have some iconic, somewhat cheesy films in between, like the Sylvester Stallone arm wrestling movie.
Isn't that where Chuck Norris came from? Some of those cheesy.
Pretty much, at least basically almost every odd and end Chuck Norris film you can think of, like the whole the Invasion movie, the Invasion of the USA, I think it's called.
Chuck Norris pretty much got his start on Walker, right?
Pretty well. That's where everyone loves Chuck Norris for.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like basically, your stars like Charles Bronson, Chuck Norris. They love they love their Chucks. That's really that's what kept Canon on the line for many years. So the idea is like now the superhero boom, and basically Superman's getting sequels. And after Superman 3, they acquire the rights to Superman 4. Because again, Superman 3 financially it did well, but again critically things are kind of going down decline, and essentially things fall through, and they have to sell off the rights, which lands in the hands of the quote unquote highly capable hands of Canon Films, and it doesn't go well.
Oh.
So at this point in time, they're doing Superman. These are the same people that did Superman 4, and they're getting into the Marvel side of things with the Captain America film in the 1990s.
Oh, that was terrible.
Oh, the
That's the
Captain
thing.
America. Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Oh,
That's where Spider-Man comes in the fray. So the idea is that they're trying to acquire as many big name rights as they can to get as many eyes on their movie as possible, which is why there's Superman and why they're trying to get their hands on Cap. And this is during the early infamy of early '90s Marvel films. Like at this point, you have the '89 Punisher, you have Cap, you have let's see. Also, you have the Fantastic Four is kind of in development at this point. The Roger Corman Fantastic Four. That's kind of the stuff you have in the works in the '90s, and anyway, so Spider-Man was amongst those. Again, kind of the poster child of Marvel, one of the big success stories of Marvel is really on the rise of just kind of being adapted into a canon film. Of course, canon goes bankrupt. Basically, the superhero movies were kind of the mark of the end for canon, where the budgets had to be so restrained. That's why Superman 4 looked so bad, because they had to strip out all the money for the effects, because canon was hemorrhaging money at that point, and they went bankrupt. And they ended up selling it to, I believe, Carolco and like another subsidiary, like 21st Century, something or other. Point being, this lands in eventually that's how it gets in the hands of James Cameron. So James Cameron was going to make the Spider-Man movie. He was in 1995. So James Cameron, his version of Spider-Man, he was like at this point the script makers before it landed in Cameron's hands, they were flirting with ideas like, let's circumvent the origin story and let's talk about the Goblin's last stand, which of course will eventually end up in the movie that we do get. So again, they're kind of floating some ideas around. Some things are attaching, some things aren't. James Cameron, the idea is it's like how Tim Burton was when they're doing Superman Lives. The idea is that Cameron gets paid if he does it or if he doesn't do it. So the big question that no one can really confirm nor deny is, did Cameron care about Spider-Man? Because the theory, I don't know if you guys have ever read the pages or not, but Cameron's Spider-Man script, it basically reads as if a man who just looked at Spider-Man on the iconography alone and never read a Spider-Man comic in his life. He basically was given some characters and what the character looks like. He didn't read them.
That sounds about right, honestly.
They basically is like Spider-Man's like a scary, kind of a broody, scary guy, and he's he played with he's called Spider-Man. He's got kind of an eerie looking costume. That's pretty much what his Spider-Man was like. And you had Electro and Sandman as the villains. I mean, Doc Ock was floating around at this point, but
Can you imagine a Sandman done in the '90s? That'd look terrible. Oh.
And they were going to do things a lot differently.
Almost sounds like you would have been better fit for Batman.
Yeah,
exactly. And of course, things went the Terminator route with Cameron. So, and of course, Cameron to Avatar, went the Terminator to Avatar. So, Cameron's floating on a bed of money still, so he's fine. Don't worry about James Cameron.
It seems it all worked out.
And infamously, it was going to end on like a sex scene between Spider-Man and Mary Jane on the Twin Towers. It was a whole.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah, that's not the family.
Again, the big thing though was he introduced the organic web shooters, which did take, and he wrote one of the initial drafts. So that's the big takeaway from all the Cameron stuff. So again, Cameron's about to go forward with this. They're about to make a decision. Okay, do we go forward with this? And 96 rolls around. And 96 is a very important year in the history of comics, gentlemen. 96 is when Marvel goes bankrupt. That's when they hit the oversaturation of the comic market. That's when you have all these foils and variant covers and everything. They had the idea of oh my God, everyone buying comics. If I buy many issues of this one comic, I can sell it and kind of retire and send my kids to college. That sort of mentality, which of course the big collectible boom was 96. And they realized we have too much product here, and then people realize I can't make any money off this, and they stop buying, and we have all these additional copies of the same thing, and we just basically we've eaten through our the point being, it leads like a stock market crash in comics, and Marvel of all places went bankrupt, and this Marvel was in bad shape. They had to sell all the movie rights to other studios, and that's why it's so hard. That's why the Hulk's owned by Universal. That's why they had the Corman Fantastic Four just kind of hitting all the problems that it did with the release. And eventually, Marvel is bailed out by Toy Biz. Marvel was saved by the toy companies. Toy Biz,
and Marvel never recovered. Oh wait, sorry, it's a bad joke.
The Toy Biz saves the company, and that introduces Avi Arad, who's kind of now very synonymous with Spider-Man and Venom nowadays. He's really he threatened to make that Venom movie, and he finally did. Avi Arad, so he enters the fray, and he was kind of the Kevin Feige of the day, but kind of let's just say a morally ambiguous Kevin Feige. say the least. Point being, Avi Arad, he comes, he bails him out. So 98, that's when all that happens. So they sell the rights for MGM to Columbia and Sony. So again, basically this MGM was like really mad because they wanted Spider-Man. Eventually, it got sold to Columbia / which would become Sony. Vice versa. They go to a bunch of directors. Sam Raimi, at this time, he's a huge comic book fan. He has been like since he was a kid. Had like a giant painting of Spider-Man put on his wall, famously. You know, as like his birthday present or something. It was like Sam Raimi, diehard Spider-Man fan.
Heck, even through his like Evil Dead movies, he showed his love for comics and stuff.
But even more so, Darkman. See, Darkman was Sam Raimi wanting to do something that was kind of a nod to Batman the Shadow, but he couldn't get the rights to do a Batman movie, so he was able to do kind of Darkman as kind of, again, basically Darkman served as proof of concept for Sam Raimi directing a superhero movies. That really got him the job, as well as like the other films, the other strides that he was hitting as kind of a filmmaker who could work really good and for the most part really cheap. Well, you get the point is like really like a guy who could do a lot with what he was given. Really inventive shots and so on and so forth. The things we know Raimi for today still. So, he had a lot of love for the early 60s Spider-Man, like a lot of the origin stuff. The Sinister Six, that was a big favorite of his. They get David Koepp on the script. Now, David Koepp, I'm sure Tiki remembers from Jurassic Park.
Oh, yes. Right,
or Jurassic Park. Oddly enough, just given the New York setting of Spider-Man, he directed and wrote Premium Rush, which is a really underrated movie. I recommend everybody check out.
Yeah, I want to say that's still on my to-do list.
So the point being, so David Koepp, he came in, he rewrote the James Cameron script, and that's why you basically gave him sole credits. You don't see James Cameron's fingerprints at all in the movie because they really wanted to downplay whether it was because of that script he wrote or just for simplicity's sake and the Writers Guild, all that sort of stuff. So David Koepp, he basically refurbished the James Cameron script, and they brought in other guys to refurbish David Koepp's script, but he gets the sole credit. And the last notable thing, and I'm sure Sandy's well aware of this. When the marketing Spider-Man, they're again, and as Tiki alluded to, of course, they knew they were going to make this movie all the way back in 2000. They did, and you had like him crawling up the side of the building. The point is, Spider-Man and buildings synonymous. And in the James Cameron script, again, you had the Twin Towers factoring into things, and the Twin Towers were actually worked into the marketing of Spider-Man. There was a promo that was shot where like a teaser that was shot where Spider-Man foiled a heist, like a helicopter bank heist. And he kind of webbed them in between the Twin Towers. And, of course, you have, like, the poster of Spider-Man's, the reflection of the Twin Towers in Spider-Man's eyes. And, of course, 2001 rolls around. Obviously, this does not fly, and they have to get rid of all of this. And the only shot that remains is that one shot during the montage of Spider-Man saving people. When he looks and you see the reflection real quick. Like, blink and you miss it in the reflection of the eyes because they digitally removed the Twin Towers, as was very popular in so many and so many things around that time. Everyone was really sensitive about 9/11. They wanted to get rid of all traces of the Twin Towers.
And Tiki, when you were sharing your story earlier about the poster, I thought you were going to say you went into the theater and you saw that promo.
No, but I do definitely vividly remember that promo and the helicopter between the big web in the middle of the two towers. I definitely remember that for sure. All right. So yeah, that was and of course also Dragon piggybacking off of that really quick, and then we'll get into things. That also kind of led to a very like pro-America, pro-New York sentimentality in the finished product. Maybe even in editing. I feel like Danny Elfman's score is very patriotic in nature.
Yeah. It's very rallying. I don't know if I'd say patriotic. It feels
like to me, it kind of reminds me of like a, I don't know, like an American war march or something.
An
like
anthem,
that.
Tiki. You're looking for
it's very heroic.
Yeah.
No, it's supposed to be heroic.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it just works. I mean, I know what Tiki's trying to say.
All right. So with that in mind, do you want to get to the hero's journey, guys? You want to get to the heroes here?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So let's start with Peter Parker, of course, the man, the myth, the legend himself. If someone told you that he was just an average, ordinary kid, not a care in the world, somebody lied.
Wait, Peter Parker is Spider-Man?
Who's Spider-Man?
I think it's the guy from Seabiscuit. Well, let's talk
All right,
about that guy
so-
from Seabiscuit for a minute. Overall, let's talk about Tobey Maguire first and foremost before we dive into the
Yeah,
trailer.
Toby just works, man. I mean, people give him shit, but honestly, he just works, and I would love to see him as a live action Peter B. Parker in a live action Spider-Verse movie or something like that. I mean, it's like he's just such a legacy performance at this point. Honestly, I don't care that everyone in that high school looks like they're in their 20s. That's just kind of like part of the style of the time.
You got to remember, like, Smallville and everything. Like, this was a very common thing.
Yeah,
it's a thing of the early 2000s.
The late 90s too, with the Scream movies as well.
Yeah. So Tobey Maguire, yes, Tobey Maguire is an exceptional Peter Parker. Yeah, it would sound like a broken record, but I think it's worth bearing it when we're doing this of all momentous occasions. It's like Tobey Maguire. What he did so well, he brought you would capture again the drama of the character, and he played a dramatic performance along with capturing the Parker luck, straight off the page. Like that is, he plays a better Peter Parker than he does necessarily Spider-Man. It's a fine Spider-Man, but he plays a much better Peter Parker. I think that's like the big, like that's still the thing. Like even though I don't want to make it too much of a compare and contrast with where we are in the MCU, but I mean the MCU we kind of hit a little bit of both, and that's good. I like that. But again, in terms of like who hit it best with Peter Parker, I mean nothing's knocking down Tobey Maguire with like how he played Peter Parker. Very human performance, it really connects to an audience.
And it's very easy to relate to, Yeah. He's very easy to relate to.
He plays the down on the luck aspect as well, and he's believable as Peter Parker and Spider-Man. Like he's like, oh crap, I have these strange powers. Like, I mean, this isn't one of the scenes, but like the moment he sees those things coming out of his fingers, and he just instinctively sticks his hand into the wall. Like you can see like the trepidation in his body, and that's just like very good physical acting on his part.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, if people say that, oh, he's not enough of a wisecrack when he's actually Spider-Man, but for example, if you take a really nerdy guy and you put him, if he suddenly becomes a superhero like he does in this movie, he's not going to suddenly become this, cool, slick wisecrack. He's still going to be kind of a nerd, He's not going to become this cool guy. He's a superhero, but he's still the same guy.
Yeah, you're right, Sandy. He's gonna crack like really corny ass jokes that may not be in the realm of what the comic is, but I feel like it's more realistic.
He's gonna try to be cool, but it's gonna come off corny.
It's you who's out, Gobby. Out of
your mind.
Wrong answer.
God.
So in regards to the character's journey within our origin film here. So again, he's playing the photographer. He's the very relatable human connect for the audience. The photographer who's in love with Mary Jane. He's a kid head over heels in love and gets these powers that really shakes up his status quo in a major way. And I feel this is kind of manifest itself in essentially a selfish pursuit at the start of things, where again he's trying to. If you really look at the movie, really rewatch the movie, you see that Peter Parker, again, he's just kind of a guy who's really kicked around, and people just, they're really just kind of crapping on him and with the Parker luck in his life.
I love that fat kid on the bus.
You mean the kid with the donut kid?
Yes.
Yeah, that guy. Again, he has the open seat, but really, I mean, who are you to question his status? I mean, come on.
No, that's what I'm saying. Open seat, and he's just like, oh.
Anyway, so
it's like even the bus driver is like, all right, whatever. I gotta do my job, but it's so fun.
It's like, damn it, it's Peter Parker again.
Yeah, I tell you, on a rewatch, I think. Yet another rewatch. I think my read on this is that he's kind of manifesting kind of the way it's kind of you treat others as you would like to be treated, that sort of thing. Where in this case, it's kind of like you're adapting to what you see, and that you see the high school mentality in Peter Parker here, where again he's mad. He's trying to get a car to win the girl. Very superficial, very kind of selfish thing. Again, he's doing things to kind of like earn money instead of using his powers in kind of a more productive capacity. Again, he's trying to get even to an extent, without like not a malicious way. But he's trying to kind of mimic what the status quo of all the popular kids and what everyone is. It's like I'm going to try and match everyone now that I can now bring out my specialness to impress Mary Jane. It's like I have these powers. I'm going to use them to impress. I'm going to use them to kind of upgrade my status to kind of match how I'm kind of physically feeling right now. Of course, in doing that, he's being disingenuous to himself, and he's basically he's kind of being disingenuous to the self that who he fundamentally is. And of course, he kind of learns this via Uncle Ben, so they dance around that a little bit, and that kind of leads him to this really sobering moment of making kind of embarking on the hero's journey after he's kind of been down the wrong path. He's kind of readjusting himself now.
Mm-hmm. Now, with great power, there must also come great responsibility.
Yes. He's and I guess in terms of like once kind of dons the mask and everything, he's learning to I think the biggest theme of the movie, of the first movie, is grappling with duality. Duality is like, if you had someone of one where duality is the main threat that Peter Parker is contending with. Not only just duality in his villain, but duality in his own life. He's dealing with it. He's facing the hero's test of dealing with the duality of his role, because he keeps hurting those closest to him unintentionally. Unintentionally, he keeps kind of hurting people close to him. This life is taking a bit of a toll. It's not quite the toll that we're going to see in Spider-Man 2. But again, he's kind of starting to realize what the risk is. Like what's the trade-off of being this fantastical superhero. There's going to be a cost, and people are going to be in danger around you if you love them, and bad guys. We always hear this talked up, and God knows how many things. This movie really does put it to the test. Where people, if you're close to people and they find out who you are, they really could be in danger. Of course, we see that in strides in this movie.
Uh-huh.
I guess this kind of facilitates the choice of divorce. I guess by the end of the movie, during the big funeral scene at the end, he chooses to divorce the two sides of himself. He tries to keep them as separate as he can. He wins the girl, but he opts not to make the selfish choice to honor the path Uncle Ben kind of started him down, I suppose.
Yeah.
All right.
Mary Jane.
Do what you need to do to her, then broom her fast.
Well, I think Mary Jane is one of the biggest downside. I feel it's a little bit harsh, but
I think she's at her best in this movie, and that's not saying much.
She's kind of a walking plot device. Let's be honest.
Oh yeah,
damsel in distress is
honestly, she's the thing that dates the movie more than anything else. Let's be clear here.
Kirsten Dunst. Again, I don't know. I make the argument that she's better in Spider-Man 2, but again, here's the thing. Here's the difference. Okay,
I have to rewatch Spider-Man 2. It's been a while since I've seen Spider-Man 2. So
here's the thing. She's not. Again, I wouldn't say she's
the thing I remember from her about Spider-Man 2 is that she's just all up on Peter's grill about not seeing the play, even though she's totally just dating someone else. And it's
you're right about that. What I'm saying is she's still a weak link of that movie, but comparatively, again, like I don't think we'll see on the rewatch.
It's nothing on Kirsten Dunst because she's a really great actress. It's the writing. The writing is for her in this movie is because in the second one she definitely, because I'm always reminded of this behind the scenes interview with Kirsten Dunst, and she was saying how Mary Jane in this movie is not the damsel in distress, or she was trying to not make her be, and it didn't really pan out that way because she definitely is the damsel in distress in this movie.
I totally forgot that she starts this movie off as Flash Thompson's girlfriend. I mean, how forgettable is that plot line?
Yeah. They break up the graduation scene.
And what's kind of funny is that she's not like that in the comics at all.
That's the thing. Basically, the Mary Jane that Kirsten Dunst is playing in this movie is just she's just playing kind of the comic eye candy. That's kind of what she's playing. She's playing Mary Jane in the classic sense, in which Mary Jane, again, the most iconic thing about Mary Jane, not in a negative way, but the most iconic thing is you face a tiger, you've hit the jackpot. And she's trying to turn that into a character. Unfortunately, the writing isn't quite supporting anything beyond just hey, here's what she's playing in the first movie. She starts off very surface level girl next door. That's who she is. That's what her character is. Like, we put her next door to Peter Parker instead of the whole a blind date aspect of it. And that somewhat takes away the mystery and the mystique and kind of the seduction of the character. We just kind of have she's always been there, and they're trying to make things a little simple with the story there. I won't fault them too much for that, but unfortunately, we kind of hit cliche upon cliche with her, and it doesn't quite it doesn't really kill the movie, but you have to be aware that looking back on it years later, it's like, yeah, she's really just there to be a plot device. It's not much that she's struggling as an actor who's a waitress, and that's really all we got going on with her.
Okay, I will argue though that she has the most iconic scenes in this movie.
She does. She has one of the most iconic scenes. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The upside down kiss.
Yeah, she has the poster worthy.
I mean, I'm talking the upside down kiss, but I'm also talking stuff like Dragon, you mentioned the girl next door thing, but I think that first initial conversation with her that they kind of mimic in Spider-Man 2, the girl next door chat, is just so endearing and sweet, and I love the Elfman score, and I just think they have good chemistry, and I don't know, it's like, I do like that scene, and I do find it somewhat iconic.
To give it points where there are some, I would like to highlight, and again, I could be reading into it here, but I mean, Mary Jane, you could say, she evolves into a more discerning love interest through the movie, rewatching it. That, she starts off in a very high school, again, she's very much, she starts out with Flash Thompson, and eventually leads to Harry Osborn. She's kind of making, the high school girl choice. So, like, I'm going kind of, I'm dating within my own status.
And, she in this movie, she's not characterless. She has character. It's there. She's not just that typical, she's not the typical damsel in distress, King Kong, where she's just, she's just a body there for the male character to rescue, her character in this movie, she's a very broken person, and I think that shines through at several different points.
She is, but maybe not. Here's the thing. Bear in mind, we've been spoiled a lot with this in later years. And maybe spoiled is not the right word. The point being, we have seen this, but again, this is like, for considering at this point in time, we're just really kind of throwing it at the screen here, where, like, we're kind of laying out the blueprint for what other movies are going to be doing with these types of characters. And some movies have kind of excelled at it more, where, again, we're just trying to, like, we have this, we gave her, I feel that we kind of went a little on the nose with, like, she has a really bad home life. I'm not saying that we can give her a bad home.
Literally on the nose, because it's like a moment that happens once. It's like, it's almost kind of like Cusco pausing the movie. Like, okay, just to be clear, MJ, abusive father. All right, you got it. Like, draws a circle around the father. All right, abusive father. All right, we clear. All right, cool.
And you know what? It happens once when he's getting the meatloaf out of the oven, but then it happens again the next morning, and it's like it pauses again. And just to be clear, this is what's happening here. Just to be clear, okay, we're going to resume now. Okay,
exactly. Like, basically, again, like, if they want to do something, it basically feels like they wanted to address it, but they wanted to give her something, but they knew they couldn't write something for her at that time because they wanted to focus on all the other stuff that's going on, and it's just like she kind of fell by the wayside. And again, it's not entirely the fault of Kirsten Dunst. Again, that's more the writing than it is anything else. Again, better story in regards to stuff with Mary Jane. Just again, in the dialogue, we'll get to when we get to it. And point being, on Mary Jane in this movie, I would argue that. So again, like, she's kind of thinking that high school mentality to the point where she, over the course of the movie, she kind of sees what she overlooked in Peter Parker to the point where she kind of falls for him. And I really love. It is kind of a full circle thing if you look at it that way, because we end with her alone in Peter Parker's position at the start of the movie. It's kind of a befitting fate for her,
Mm-hmm.
And also with the Dames on the Stress thing, I will give her this. And again, this specifically could be me reading into it, is that she is kind of a representation of both worlds. Again, of the duality theme of the movie, where she's the two worlds colliding, and when they collide, it can be a dangerous thing. Or again, she the representative of Peter Parker, but also Spider-Man has saved her a number of times. She's made herself kind of a public target, but also, again, all of this again in finding out A connects to B. She's in grave danger. It's like she's not going for. I love that she's not going for Spider-Man after he saved her like twice. It's like she's not. We're not going the Batman Forever route with her. We're not going the route like the whole Chase Meridian. Like she's, like Chase Meridian's like dating Bruce Wayne and Batman at the same time. We're not doing any of that. But the fact that she kind of sees Peter Parker. It reflects well on her character that she falls for Peter Parker and not for Spider-Man. I think that's really telling.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into Harry Osborn. Oh, man. So, guys, I think we can all agree here, everyone in this room, this was our first exposure to one James Franco.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, yeah.
Oh, yeah. One guy that I want to point out in connection to Harry Osborn, just because I feel like we have a lot of opportunities to just kind of make fun of silly stuff in this movie. I love the uber serious teacher in the field trip scene who looks no older than any of the other kids.
Yeah, you noticed that too. Yeah, he really doesn't
Oh,
look
of
much
course I
older.
noticed that. I noticed that from the first time I ever saw this movie.
I always knew there was something that I didn't like about that guy, but then I realized what exactly it was. Because, like, yeah, that guy. Well, I always felt this guy's just taking things way too seriously. If you talk, could botch your grade. Essentially, it's like it's a little.
Well, yeah, basically, word for word, because I have this whole movie pretty much memorized. What he says, he's like, "Next one to talk fails the class. I kid you not."
A little hard. And remember, he has that. Yeah.
You were talking during that woman's entire presentation. Let's go talk about how we listen.
Yeah, he stole my line, but he got it. He did a lot better than I would if he got
it. All right, but seriously, with Harry, of course, I do like Harry's arc a lot in this movie. Of course, we're kind of like, it's a character who we know is kind of doomed from the start, as the movie starts. And, he definitely is sort of the tragic victim in all these circumstances. And he's the one where he's really just kind of striving for a normal life. And he's just kind of like pushed into the limelight and pushed into the, to the craziness. And he doesn't want to be, he just kind of basically all he wants to do is like, date MJ and, I don't know, just secure a good job and a good.
He wants to impress his father, Tiki. He wants to impress him.
Yeah.
And he wants to achieve he has a highest status girlfriend. He wants to have wants to be successful. He wants all these things. Where again, Peter Parker, without even trying, impresses Norman Osborn.
I think he wants to impress his father, be friends with Peter, and also maintain a healthy friendship with Peter, and like you said, date MJ. It's like, and all that stuff comes crashing down from basically two of the most important people in his life start hitting each other.
Exactly. Again, it's just Harry Osborn. Again, classically, he has a really sad relationship with his father. It's just depressing as all get out in the grand sense of things. Like, oh, poor Harry. I mean, his father treats his friend more like a son. After just meeting him in this movie, by the way, he meets him for the first time in the movie, and he's never impressed with Harry. And he holds everything against Harry, even all the minor things. Like he got kicked out of the private school, and he's just like, he's holding it over his head. He just has these. Like Harry has these blinders on when it comes to his father, all over the place. And again, eventually gets to has the blinders on for everything until he gets by the end of the movie. Again, like his focus is on his father. Well, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. He has these. Basically, things obviously change in a big fundamental way by the end, where we have kind of the classic Spider-Man drama of it all, where we facilitated Harry Osborn's hate for Spider-Man by just it's the classic situation where and many times you see it with Spider-Man, like in the comics, Betty Brant blamed the death of her brother on Spider-Man because the lizard killed her brother, I believe. I think that's how it went. And have like a situation like where you have someone close to Peter Parker who's wronged, and Spider-Man is kind of there and gets all the blame for it. And it's just like he just poisons the friendship between he and his friend. He knows that his friend he'll never be able to kind of heal that wound. He knows that deep down.
And coming out of this movie, whenever I watch it, Harry is always the person I feel for the most, because he just wants to be a normal guy, and he has all this horrible stuff happen to his dad dies. I mean, in the second one it gets worse. He's turning into this monster. Then he realizes his dad was this psychopath who tried to blow up half the city. His best friend's Spider-Man, and it's like Mary Jane dumps him. All he wants to do is be a normal guy. Come on.
Let me ask you guys this.
I mean, one subset of these movies is be accurately called The Tragedy of Harry Osborn.
Yeah,
let me ask you this. The car scene between Harry and Norman, the advice that Norman gives Harry is, don't be ashamed of who you are. Like, be proud of who you are. Now, do you view that as a good or bad piece of advice coming from Norman Osborn? Because I'm saying that because you see how it kind of parallels, Peter and Uncle Ben. Of course, we'll get specifically that scene a little bit later on. But in terms of like just kind of the caliber of advice coming out, I wonder if that's like Norman Osborn trying to give his son a good piece of advice, or just giving him a piece of advice that leads to him doing things like stealing Peter Parker's girl. Just again, embracing the Osborn name and maybe some not so flattering capacities.
You know what? I'm just gonna bounce off that really quick because there is a deleted scene in the movie. You can actually see it in the bloopers. It's the fireplace scene where Norman Osborn. It's after the Thanksgiving dinner. He leaves. He goes back. He's talking to his subconscious as the mask. And there's an extended. That scene's actually extended. There's a part where a line where Norman said he basically he's making conversation with the mask, and he's talking about how he's almost betrayed betrayed Harry, his actual son, and that's where the mask. It's actually that line that stayed in the movie. The betrayal must not be what is it? It's the line the mask makes about betrayal. What is it?
Betrayal must not be begotten by something.
Yes, it's something like that, and Norman loves his son. I wish they kept that part in the movie because you see it later on as well when he's right before he attacks the bridge.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you're right. The bridge.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and whether that's Norman.
He has that one bonding moment with. He has that moment. There's the moment of bonding with Harry, and of course the perverse thing. Again, Harry is kind of a representation of the consequence of the dual identity, with again kind of the Spider-Man drama. But by the same token, he connects with his son after his son basically gives him the tools to really get to the heart. First we attack his heart, Osborn. That whole thing. That whole
and he connects with his son, and that's the last time Harry sees him before he's dead. And that's when Harry, he feels like he could actually have a stronger connection with his dad now, and now he's dead.
And it all happens because he thinks that Spider-Man killed him.
Exactly.
All right, I think this is a perfect.
Which of course we all know leads to the next movie.
Sure.
So Harry, in a nutshell, it's an unfortunate tragedy. His whole arc throughout the series, it's really sad.
Don't tell Harry.
Harry.
I mean, somebody had to say it. I mean.
And on that note, that's a perfect segue into the villains.
Yes.
Villain.
Gubby.
So yeah, I absolutely adore how seriously Willem Dafoe took this role, and it absolutely shows on rewatch.
Yeah, he
lived.
They offered us some big. Yep, go on.
He lived this role.
Yeah, Dafoe really threw himself
into it.
Really
proud of it too. Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't expect the suit to be that heavy, but I mean he really went for it in all those takes. And basically he's as physically in that suit as often as he can be, from what I understand. Rarely is there a stunt double in the suit.
Yeah, because he didn't think that the stunt double would be able to capture the Goblin's persona.
Exactly.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
As far as I think that's what he said.
I think you're right. So, he really embodies the menace and the instability of Norman Osborn. He really does. And of course, Norman Osborn just famously, again, with the whole dual identity thing, Norman Osborn represents this in a little kind of Jekyll Hyde sense, where, again, he has kind of two sides of himself. Again, kind of the... I found the most fascinating parallel between Spider-Man and the Green Goblin for this movie is that, with the Spider-Man origin is Norman Osborn is trying to be responsible in times of crisis at his company, which leads to a really irresponsible choice of testing the Goblin serum on himself. And this gives him great power that he then uses evilly. But again, it was coming from a responsible place. And again, it's kind of akin to, again, there's a vague, again, I want to say, I can't go on and fully say a father figure dynamic, because if there is a father figure dynamic between Peter and Osborn, again, Norman again, he respects Peter Parker as if he were the son that he always wanted. But by the same token, it's like they only knew each other, I mean, maybe I'm trying to think how much time passes between the high school scene and the graduation, when Norman meets Peter Parker. Probably not that much time.
Not that much time. No, the high school scene. It's that Uncle Ben dies. Goblin destroys the Quest Aerospace base. I think it's right after that. So not that much time at all.
Again, given when he gets we get to Spider, but it's just a question of how much time do we go forward from the field trip to the graduation. That's the thing. It may not necessarily be going day by day. It could be a month or so past.
I think it probably is about a month.
Anyway, the point being, I don't know. Maybe that's the thing, because like they're trying to replace the flight suit, and then they're going to it like they had like a guy. The question: did they have a guy in the back pocket to replace Norman Osborn, or was it, or like was it just time? Is point? Sorry, I'm asking very small questions here. The point being,
okay, here's actually sorry to cut you off. Here's a good way of thinking about it, though. If you calendar this movie, because the high school, I guess, would have ended at the beginning of summer, and then Thanksgiving. So it all happens. The whole movie happens in a course of probably about 3 months.
That's a good point.
3.5 months.
Think about that. Let's see. Right. So the point being, he is kind of. I love that Osborn, he respects Peter Parker in the regards of he wants to make it on his own shingle. He wants to hang his own shingle. He doesn't want to take charity in regards to finding work and everything. And again,
he wants to make it on his own steam.
Exactly, he wants to make it on his own steam. It's it's a wonderful sentiment that he has there. And again, I think it's kind of speaking to a guy just taking that responsibility, like kind of the working kind of blue collar man like Uncle Ben is. And I think Peter respects it on the other side of things to an extent as well. I don't want to read too much into that because he hasn't known for that long, but
Yeah, I think I'm not sure if this might be canon. I think Norman's parents probably were, like Uncle Ben type, hardworking American, who earned their fortune. I think that might be the extended comic stuff, but anyways, maybe you can help me with that. Yeah. Anyways.
So he's merciless, he's strong, but then he has like this bag of tricks that kind of matches Spider-Man's abilities, his webbing and everything. So it's kind of what we have again, it's not necessarily the literal bag of tricks the Green Goblin usually has, but he's got like sleeping asleep, he's got the glider with all the machine gun built in the glider, razor bats.
It's the sleep.
Sleep.
You have to have that ha-ha at the end. Anyways, go on, Dragon. Sorry.
But he reflects. The point being, like he is kind of very much fits into the arch nemesis space really well, in how he reflects the duality and how he uses that duality to attack the heart. Or Sandy,
yes,
to attack the heart. In other words,
you want me to say the line?
Yes, I'd like you to say the line, please.
First, we attack his heart. Is that the line you wanted?
Yeah, no, that's the line I wanted. Okay. I just wanted it a little earlier. That's all. That's the line. So he has great credibility, and he's a great. He creates Spider-Man unintentionally.
And it's nice that they chose a villain that doesn't have the same exact abilities as Spider-Man.
And we do a much better version, like what we have in '89, with the whole, like you created me, I created you, that whole thing. Where we do it a lot better here, where we have, Norman Osborn, Oscorp, create. I love how we made certain changes, like Oscorp creates the Super Spider. That, of course, you beget Spider-Man, which begets, eventually kind of Spider-Man versus the Green Goblin. It's all really kind of nicely relative.
Yeah,
that actually kind of even led to. I mean, has it always been Oscorp that created the Spider?
No. Not
or
always.
Is it a random radioactive spider?
Yeah, again, it was like
a field trip or something. Yeah,
it's a field trip where it's kind of like have these two. I don't know if superconductors is the right word. We have like these two kind of like standing things that kind of it's like a radiation experiment. It's like a beam of radiation. The spider comes down in between the two things, and then that just kind of crawls off, and it's like it becomes genetically mutated before your eyes, sort of thing.
And because I know in the Ultimate version they used the spider being created by Oscorp.
Which I'm pretty sure is I'm trying to remember how influenced by. I'm trying to remember when Ultimate Spider-Man was now.
I think that was
2001.
Either it was around the same time, or this movie inspired it, or vice versa.
Good point.
Goblin has the upper hand in this movie by a long shot, I think, because he has all those gadgets and bombs and blades and the sleeping gas, and it seems like he can just take Spider-Man at any time he wants, but he doesn't.
And he knows how to play Spider-Man. Like he sets the building on fire because he knows that Spider-Man will go after the people and not him.
Yeah. And of course, in the ending with the villain monologue, he just drags that out and ends up being his own defeat.
and he could basically be almost like Spider-Man's Joker in a way.
Well, he is Spider-Man's Joker in a way.
Yeah, definitely.
Except he ended up dead.
Or did he? Well, he came back in mirror form.
His spirit raged on, though. He
Yeah.
lived in our hearts.
He can just say he was avenged.
Avenge!
Hey,
Hey, Harry, do you want to know what my favorite band is?
Avenged.
No, it's Avenged Sevenfold!
Do you want to know what my favorite movie is? The Avengers.
The Avengers!
Ironically enough.
yeah. All right. Unless you have anything major non-band related to mention about Norman Osborn, perhaps we should move on.
Okay.
Well, let's talk about. Can we talk about the costume, because that's pretty controversial?
I thought you'd want to get into like pros and cons, but I mean.
Okay, yeah, we can do that.
Okay, so something that is definitely a pro is all the Daily Bugle stuff.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I mean, my God, let's
Are we doing the pros and cons now?
No, we're doing this. Let's talk about our kind of our spider supporting characters, as it were. Let's go there.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's talk about a little happy couple by the name of Ben and May Parker.
Who are they?
Well, just some random people that Spider-Man lives with. His Spider-Man's roommates.
Yeah, they're like his, they're his elderly roommates. Like Deadpool has Blind Al, he's got Aunt May, he's got, Ben.
God.
I think Deadpool had a run-in with Uncle Ben once, but I could never.
Yeah, so I think everybody knows this is the best Uncle Ben performance.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I mean, that's just by a long shot.
Nothing against Martin Sheen, though. It was good.
I can't tell you how happy I was to hear his voice.
I mean, well technically he was barely in the Amazing Spider-Man, and so far he hasn't been in the MCU.
Yeah, what's his name? The Amazing Spider-Man. He was just unlikable. I don't know.
I don't think he was unlikable.
I think he was unlikable.
I think he was unlikable.
I didn't think he was unlikable.
Were you going somewhere with that, or just you kind of I thought he was unlikable? I'm sorry, I thought you were going somewhere bigger with that.
No, I'm just like stirring the pot, Dragon. I'm agreeing with Sandy.
I don't. That's kind of hard. I don't think he was unlikable. I mean, considering we didn't see much of him.
He was a little stern, but again, he wasn't wrong in the movie, though, and he was on his side. He died for him.
Okay. Well, Uncle Ben, I don't know. Cliff Robertson is just saint-like, though.
He is. He's got those eyes, and his eyes are just so
eyes,
angelic.
man.
I mean, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not denying that this is the superior Uncle Ben. I'm just saying.
The definitive Uncle Ben for sure.
Yes.
There's a lot of competition, but the definitive Uncle Ben nonetheless. So I kind of know something with Ben and May. I kind of know something with Uncle Ben and May that I think thematically they're both linked with change. I think change is a huge thing with their story, and especially how it relates to Peter. Because Ben, as I mentioned, he's kind of on the job hunt at the start of this movie. Again, he's been replaced as he was fired as an electrical engineer, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Shocker.
So
what a shocker.
Clever. Anyway, so again, in one sense, Ben is kind of dealing with the kind of the Parker luck almost as a genetic trait within the family. He's down on his luck, and so he's dealing with kind of a change, and that he's going to have to learn how to deal with computers and everything if he wants to find a job at his age to support the family. Which, of course, the money issues of the Parker family is going to be kind of a big thing in Spider-Man 2, because we're kind of facilitating. It's kind of an unspoken thing, but it really does have great resonance in 2 that, of course, Ben was the sole person bringing the money in the family, and now all this is going to. It's a very much kind of a coming of age story with Peter Parker in that respect, in terms of between 1 and 2, that he has to fill Uncle Ben's role in a big way and to take care of Aunt May.
But you also get the life insurance, I think.
Sure. I mean,
technical about it.
Right.
Maybe.
So
it's kind of dark. I'm sorry.
But I do like. God, it's dark. Anyway, so Ben, I love that Ben did have the foresight. Did have the foresight to tell Peter this. He was able to tell that Peter was morally in jeopardy, and he kind of saves him in kind of his last action. of on this planet to an extent. I thought that was really kind of nice that he was able to see again. He was just kind of with kind of change and everything going on, just kind of recognizing again the kind of the teenager kind of going through a phase here and given all the doings and all the things they're not really privy to, but kind of sensing that there's something deeper going on that he wants to kind of set straight if he can. And it's a really we'll get there when we get there. I'm jumping a little bit ahead here, but it's so change. But Ben's mainly dealing with the change with Peter, and then Aunt May, of course, she is Rosemary Harris.
Rosemary Harris. Oh my God! I think she has a lot more competition with Aunt May because I think I do like Sally Fields. I think Sally Fields. The only thing wrong with her is that they kind of like her bits are a little bit too improv-y, where it's like, all right, I get it, the laundry sheriff, I get it, all right. But Sally Fields is good, and of course Marissa Tomei is definitely a different kind of Aunt May. But guys, in terms of just being a straight up like comics accurate version of Aunt May, Rosemary Harris is the real.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
she is. She's kind of like
still alive too, isn't she?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure she is. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Unless you've heard anything. Anyway, so Aunt May, she's kind of the angel of mercy for Peter Parker. I think she's just kind of the. I kind of looked at it this way with the theme of change. She loses her status quo, before that she had before Peter Parker. Like the thing before she even raised Peter Parker, she had Ben in her life, and Ben is gone, and now that's a big fundamental change for anyone, especially a perennial figure. So I think that kind of launches her into overdrive, especially when we get to 2. But I think here as well, where she's mothering and doting on Peter even more so because now that's her world now. Her world is and she has one thing to happen to Peter, and she wants to make sure that he's okay. Like she's spending Thanksgiving with family and everything. She's trying to figure out how to go forward. And right now, the only thing that's a constant that she can kind of depend on is Peter Parker. And of course, it's going to be fundamentally changed in 2. But right now, it's like that's what she has to cling to. And of course, the response to that is that she's kind of a casualty of. She's kind of a casualty of Peter's change in that she's almost we always talk about the shock of Peter Parker being Spider-Man being too much for Aunt May to bear, but she goes through a big shock in this movie with the Green Goblin. I gotta be honest.
Oh.
I mean, like a lot of stories, Aunt May actually does like kind of just come to realize that he is Spider-Man. Like basically she sees it as basically because since she lives with him, she finds it very obvious that he is.
I don't know if JMS was the first one to do that with Aunt May, but it's one of the great stories that when she finds out that Peter's Spider-Man, it's a good story.
And her performance is so perfect. It's just she's so lovable in that role that it makes when the Goblin attacks her near the end of the movie, it makes it just so powerful.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The Goblin's so scary in that scene. Remember, he's just like finish it.
It's like shit's hitting the fan when the Goblin does that. It's like because that's probably the movie's most serious moment, I think.
This movie has a good sense of escalation.
Absolutely. And she gives really great advice to Peter too for his love life. She's saying she doesn't even know you, because you're so darn secretive. She's good. Yeah, Aunt May is she's so on the money, and I love how she Rosemary Harris of all the Aunt Mays. They're very diverse. They're doing different things. We're looking at her as the woman who had to raise Peter Parker in Amazing Spider-Man. We're looking at her just kind of as the doting, lovable kind of figure, with kind of the wizened figure in Peter Parker's life in these movies, and with Marissa Tomei, you have kind of the modernist take on Aunt May, which we're kind of doing now a lot of the time. We're trying to be more proactive with Aunt May. So they're very much different sides of Aunt May that we've gotten in the 55 years plus of Spider-Man at this point. So this one's kind of the more classic, that 60s sense of Aunt May. Just, she's a tough little girl, that Aunt May. She's great.
Yeah, she goes through a lot. She gets hauled to the top of a skyscraper and dropped and everything. Oh my gosh,
that would kill most people.
It would. All right.
So now
let's speaking of skyscrapers,
side characters.
What?
I said, now can we talk about my favorite side characters?
Yes, we may, Tiki. Yes, we may.
So yeah, oh my God, J.K. Simmons, he just makes the movie. Let's kind of skirt around the intro, but
Tiki, you're fired.
I would say J.K. Simmons is the most comics accurate casting ever in a superhero movie.
There's a list. He's on it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's more like when just realizing the character from page to the screen. It's
You know what's kind of funny?
uncanny.
You know what's kind of funny though? Is like Stan Lee was originally wanted to play J. Jonah Jameson in the movie, and even once jokingly referred to as J.K. Simmons as like too warm for the role.
God.
Like he jokingly said his performance is too warm.
But yeah, J. Jonah Jameson in this movie, just pure, this flawless casting, basically the Downey Jr. of his day. In all honesty, he's just I shouldn't even say because Downey Jr. made that role himself, like kind of the Reeve or the Hugh Jackman of his day. Just like he is that character. J.K. Simmons is J. Jonah Jameson.
They're actually, they weren't even that far apart though.
All right, fine. He's fine. He's just really good in the role. All right.
Maybe like Mark should say the Reeves.
Fine. He's the Reeves of his day. Fine. Okay. Point being, J. Jonah Jameson, he's just kind of this opportunist who he wants headlines, not really a lot of ethical considerations in regards to kind of the paper business. He just, it's a very money driven outfit, but he just plays this delightful boss who's impressed, but he'll never admit it. He'll never drop the poker face. In this case, the poker attitude. Just like you're fired. He'll never drop because he is really impressed with what Peter's brought to him here, but doesn't want the kid to get too full of himself. Again, it's somewhat of a layered performance if you look at it in the capacity of, again, he's impressed with this, but he's not going to drop the facade for 1 second. He's living in a fast-paced world, and I'd raise this point in comparison to kind of Uncle Ben or Aunt May, is that J. Jonah Jameson, he's trying to keep up with the changing times and the status quo, where like Uncle Ben is struggling to keep up with the modern times, and J. Jonah Jameson, of course, he's rolling with it as fast as he can. Of course, that gets you to being in kind of a grumpy place like J. Jonah Jameson is if you are keeping up with it,
And we really, over the course of the 3 movies, we really get a sense that he's a family man too. He has a wife, and he loves his son. He wants to.
My son, the astronaut.
Yeah. So he's not just a bitter guy to the core. He's a family man.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I guess really quickly, let's touch on Robbie.
Yes, Robbie gets more to do in the second movies, but on the whole here, Robbie's always a wonderful Spider-Man character from the comics, and he really gets to get to his stride in animation a lot of the time. But Joe Robert Robinson, he's kind of a smart man of few words. He's actually the reason Peter gets hired, by the way. He kind of champions Peter getting hired in the moment there. We need pictures of Spider-Man. He's just going to tell him the Jonah they're selling.
Spider-Man!
I want Spider-Man!
He helps him get the freelance job. So good on Robbie. More on him. He gets a little bit more interesting in the second one. Also we have Hoffman. Just to bring him up, we have Hoffman, who's played by Ted Raimi, a kind of a staple of Sam Raimi movies. There's always a few roles for Ted Raimi. Kind of a sycophant yes man to J. Jonah.
Yes,
Hoffman?
Jonah.
Yeah.
Yes, Jonah.
And Betty. Wasn't Betty a love interest in the comics?
Yep.
Yes, and
I think she was technically Peter's first date.
And she was the main love interest in the 67 cartoon.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I love Betty Brant. I really do. I have a soft spot for great secretary characters, and I can't get enough of that.
She is great. She oh man.
Elizabeth Banks is. I just love Elizabeth Banks, and I think she was perfect for this role. And she's just, again, we do more with her as the movies go on. We actually, she's just the one person who shows Peter Parker some genuine care in the office. Like she's just kind of the friendly secretary. Just she handles it. Again, she's literally, her role is to give Peter money.
And Dragon, of course, the funny thing is, like, me watching the movie, it's like I'm so dialed into the comics at this point that I'm I'm kind of more expecting her to be the love interest than MJ the first time I watched this movie. And I was like, oh, there it is. There's the main love interest.
I doubt it would have gone this way given how 3 ends. But, in the grand scheme of things, you've given the story between, Betty Brant and Peter Parker in the comics. Again, like she did like Peter Parker, but again, Spider-Man complicated things with kind of like in doing battle with the Lizard of all characters, who again was supposed to be in 4. So who knows how it would have gone. But honestly, Betty Brant and Peter Parker is always kind of my personal ship with the Spider-Man comics. It was never going to happen, but I rooted for the 2 kids. It never happened.
My personal favorite's Gwen.
Nothing beats Gwen Stacy. I didn't get my Betty Brant though. That's the one you want to happen. They'll never see come to fruition.
But who knows? Maybe we get it to be the best of both worlds. Have Gwen Stacy work as a secretary at the Daily Bugle.
That'd be kind of cool. Anyway, so yeah, we kind of work through them all. Oh well, one thing we have to mention with J. Jonah, though, we should mention that again. There's a really wonderful understated moment with J. Jonah Jameson that speaks volumes. That I believe Sandy mentioned off air. We got to talk about. We got to talk about the moment where he protects Peter Parker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when the Goblin, when this is right after the mirror scene, and the Goblin figures out that he can find out who takes pictures and track that down to Spider-Man. He goes to Daily Bugle. He texts J. Jonah Jameson, asks him who the photographer is, and Jameson, he refuses to give him the name of the guy, or he just says that they get him in the mail.
He mails the pictures in. I don't know him. I don't again. He's just as much as he's giving Peter Parker this, like, no, you remember, I never offered you a job. I can send you a box of Christmas meat. I'll do that for you, but I won't give you a job. It's freelance. The best thing.
They never touched on that again in the series, and that's a kind of, I think it's a little bit of a missed opportunity, but it's a little glimmer into that character in the first movie.
I think you're right. I remember in the '60s cartoon for Spider-Man, one of the episodes. I think it was one of the Kingpin episodes. I can't remember if it was the first '60s show or if it was the one after that. But the point being, one of the shows, I think it was like an early episode, if not the first episode, where basically when he gets the job at the Daily Bugle, J. Jonah Jameson has a moment where he's remarking on, like, he hired Peter Parker because he heard what happened to his uncle and he wanted to cut him a break. But he would never say that to him. He's just kind of monologuing by himself in the room, like, that's what I get for being like kind of a little bleeding heart, giving the kid a job because he lost his uncle. Again, you have these wonderful kind of personal moments with Jade, in small doses. But again, small doses go a long way.
It just, with characters like with Jameson and Norman, like they're kind of. They love they're I'm not going to say Norman Osborn or Jameson are warm-hearted guys, but
Jameson's loyal.
They're loyal and they have a soft spot. They're not completely hardened steel, hearted guys. Norman loves his son, and he makes that clear at least 2 different points in the movie. And Jameson, over the course of the series, he's shown to have a great admiration and respect for his family. So
okay, let's talk about.
It's basically.
Hold on. Sorry, Jacob. Go ahead.
It's basically Jameson plays his favorites.
Yeah.
All right, Dragon, are you sure that we want to talk about the cameo, considering it's a pretty major part of my favorite scene?
Well, yeah, I guess if you want to just, if we want to make it a running gag, we should do it now. But if you want to just work it into your thing, by all means.
I figure we should just work it into my thing on this occasion.
All right, don't drop the ball, though.
All right.
Okay.
So with that in mind, favorite scenes. Who's got the first one?
No, Tiki. Pro-com. We gotta pro-com this puppy.
Sorry. My bad.
Of course, as we kind of spoke to earlier, the Elfman score. Oh my goodness, the Elfman score.
I said this and 2 are definitely some of Elfman's best work.
Absolutely. Of course, the themes too, just like the Spider-Man.
I would even say that 3 has some really good themes. I love the Sandman theme in 3.
Technically, I don't think Elfman worked on that one.
Yeah, there's actually. We'll get into that when we get in the background of 2.
Really?
There's a story behind that. We'll get there when we get to 2.
Okay. Because I do think that 3 does have some really good stuff that sticks out in it.
Oh, absolutely. It does.
Yeah.
I mean, from what I understand, he worked on part of it, but not all of it. I mean, I don't know.
No, he had nothing to do with 3, as far as I know. Yeah,
they reused some of his themes.
Yeah, they reused the themes, but he basically worked on half of 2 and left because of creative.
Well, So, let's see. So, mainly we get the Spider-Man theme, we get the love theme. Like those 2 of the big major ones that are kind of mainstays through everything that we get in the first parts of the score. I already mentioned, like, the parallel between Peter and Norman's kind of origin story. I would kind of keep cutting between that. Speaking of which, the transitions in this movie are great. That's something we don't really have in the rest of the movies that we only have in this one. The transitions are fantastic.
You're right. Yeah.
Like the like the whole, like the Norman blowing up the test site, where we then have like the graduation hats being thrown up. We again, like literally the moment the Goblin's born, we see Peter waking up from his powers. I believe from
Yeah, you're right. It's like those little inserts, like when in the conference room, and say a little insert, a little scene between two big scenes, and same with the Quest aerospace getting blown up. That's like a little insert scene.
Guys, you know what the most famous one of these transitions is, right?
Yeah, I know what it is. Yeah,
Which one?
The dragon.
it's the yeah scene where the goblin he pops up, and then we have like that weird kind of kaleidoscope effect on him or something.
I gotta tell you, that used to genuinely freak me out as a kid, not because it was not because the moment itself was scary.
It followed such a tender scene. That's the thing.
Exactly. It's just like it does kind of come out of nowhere, and I do think it's a genuinely effective jump scare.
Yeah, guys, go back and look in that short little like 3-second clip of the goblin screaming in your face, and you can see there's another goblin sitting up above him.
Oh God.
Yeah, I'm serious. Go back and look. I have no idea why it's like that, but he's just sitting there in the background. There's just one other goblin sitting up there on the roof. And also with after the burning building, you get the fire transition and Norman sweating in the elevator.
Yeah, it's a great one. That's what I'm talking about. Like this movie has all sorts of. Again, reminds me of Toy Story 2 with the transitions in that movie. Almost.
These movies do have some good elevator scenes.
Well, yeah.
Tiki, go look that up because I want you to see that. It's gonna just.
Okay, hold on.
Okay, so really strong. Again, with the transitions, and what I'm getting at here is again, we those transitions always are like are from the Peter story and the Goblin story here, and again, it complements the parallel of the whole dual identity theme of the movie between these two characters and their origin stories that are kind of manifesting into that discovery of like what it means to have a dual identity.
Yeah.
That's my
search for to get to that.
I'll send you the link.
Okay.
So we have some iconic shots and moments, like the upside down kiss, of course, like just kind of like mainstays, like that, and the whole upside down, kind of the upside down thing. We need the blood drop. Basically, some iconic.
Like kind of just top to bottom is just perfectly cast. Like maybe one of the best cast comic book movies to this day.
Oh yeah. The use of montage to see Spider-Man in action just kind of gets some heroics kind of worked into the movie. I love seeing kind of our heroes do good things and kind of save people, so we get that going on in spades in the movie.
Also good montages are a staple in these movies.
Certainly. I love the trial and error with the web slinging. Remember, he's just trying to figure like what the famous Spider-Man hand pose is. And he's like, "Fly webs, fly, Shazam!" He's just going through all like, "I'm up and away web." It's just it does like the little heavy metal.
I wonder if the Shazam code was an intentional reference.
Well, yes, it is a reference to Captain Marvel. Yeah.
Now, Tiki, just go to 000. It's the very like first frame.
No, I thought, Sandy. Basically, what it is it's kind of like it's not there's not two goblins. It's basically like an effect where they kind of I forget exactly what it's called, but they photo impose one goblin on top of another goblin. It's
superimpose, right?
Superimpose, yeah.
But why is it there? That's what I always wonder. Why?
Because it's creepy. That's
creepy.
Again, there's multiple goblins, multiple sides to them. Get it? Like a Rubik's Cube in pants, It
just seems really weird. There's just another goblin sitting up there for no reason. I think the jump scare is enough. Anyways,
speaking of jump scares and stuff, I love the Raimi. We have some kind of signatures of Sam Raimi in the movie, like for example, we have the car, we have the iconic carts in all the movies. God, I'm blanking on the name right now.
Sam Raimi is known for his horror movies.
Well, it's true. Yeah, we have kind of a little bit of horror in there. We have the iconic car. We have Bruce Campbell. We have the little touches like the alley. Like we have of course the same alley from Darkman. He uses this alley in as many of the movies as he can get it in there. Obviously, the Evil Dead movies present a problem because usually they're around the cabin, but not counting the third one. But you have like the alley from Darkman where Spider-Man does the iconic climb. You with the finger shots, like then the little details like the close-ups on the fingers. I love the bit where when the Goblin crashes into J. Jonah Jameson's office. Right before that, Jameson threw a cigar out the window and the cigar gets thrown back in there. Like those little Raimi details, man. That's Raimi to a T.
All right.
It seems like he was made to make Spider-Man.
For the most part, some of the early blending of CG and the practical effects of the wire work, it holds up pretty well.
There are some dates. There's some of the stuff that's kind of dated though, as like
Yeah,
with the explosion and the skeletons.
yeah, that and specifically when he's in the first Spider-Man suit, just kind of climbing up, and it's like basically there's a little too much light on that scene, so the renders gets a little unfinished. So you have moments like that for sure. Yeah. Let's see, the spider sense effect, kind of slow everything down. We got that going on.
I mean, for the time though, these things worked though, so we had to be fair on the fact that it was like this is what they could do only what they could do at the time.
The '60s vibe to the movie, like all the little, basically seeing the faithfulness of the Spider-Man comics, like the Daily Bugle, just kind of seeing the Spider-Man poses, just the overall '60s Spider-Man vibe, all the earnestness within the movie. That's it's all kind of like all kind of the fun, like it's good.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, you guys got anything else? The pros before we get in the cons.
The action is well choreographed. I feel like we've pretty much gone over all that.
The art direction is really great too. And then I think the colors are really this ties in with the art direction, just the colors they choose.
Costume design,
color palette.
Costume design, the color palette. And I think this is one of those movies where I think it's just like eye candy, because you look at the Unity Day Festival, that whole scene, there is so much color, and it's so pleasing to look at. Or at the Queensboro Bridge fight, there are all the wonderful oranges and different the city in the background, the skyline, all the different lights and things. There's just so much to look at, and it's really, really beautiful down to the last shot. Like, I know there's one.
The layouts and the storyboarding are really good too. The introduction on the bus, like that whole thing, basically like the way we get from point A to point B. I don't know. It feels very Again, I'm not saying it's like as panel as we get the Spider-Verse years later, because that's perfect panel. But I'm talking like just kind of generally, it feels like we're going from. It's a really nice flow of events, like how we're just kind of the way Peter Parker introduces himself into the story, saying, "I wish that was me, not me."
Yeah, and the costumes, especially in the beginning with Peter, are very simple. It's just like a hoodie and a t-shirt or something like that. It's nothing intricate, It's he's just a nerdy guy. He's gonna put on whatever he has. I mean, like when like Jacob was saying, when he has those things coming out of his hands, he's wearing like this just really bland long sleeve shirt, blue shirt. Yeah. It's just really basic, but it works really well because you don't need to focus on what he's wearing.
Did we mention the pacing? Because I feel like the pacing of this movie is pretty much perfect.
It is really. I mean, the movie clocks in at about like an hour. I'm shaving off the credits just for until it's like 2 hours. But I mean, like shaving off the credits to say like at this point in time, like 5-6 minutes. So let's say it's about about an hour 55 minutes or so.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to today, I mean, again, now we're pushing weight. Again, Avengers Endgame. That's not a fair comparison. I mean, we're reaching the 3-hour point count for movies these days.
Oh yeah, I think you're probably exactly right, Dragon, because the movie is exactly 2 hours long. I never noticed that. The movie's 2 hours long. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's impressive.
Pacing goes a long way. It does. I mean, every act is roughly about 35 to, again, credits makes things a little complicated. Let's just say it would be an even 40-minute breakdown, but, let's just say 35 minutes per act. Roughly.
Yeah.
Tightly paced movie for how long it is.
And, I always, as a kid, I never liked how the Goblin came in so late in the story. Like Peter goes through a lot in the first act, and then Norman starts to start hearing things, and then finally the Goblin comes in the parade scene and starts attacking people and killing stuff. But it's like watching it later as an adult, it's like I appreciate that, because you still get to spend a lot of time with the Goblin, but it's not overkill,
Mm-hmm.
Right. Let's talk about some of the ugly business of the movie. Let's talk about some of the cons. Con.
Did you want to actually discuss the Goblin suit then as well?
Yeah, sure. Let's just transition through the Goblin here.
Okay.
So the Goblin look is. Look, I'm much more forgiving towards the Goblin look.
I like it. I really want to see it. I understand why they didn't do the original one in this movie, and I think the more, for lack of a better term, the more Power Ranger style look for this movie works.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, he's like, yeah,
definitely.
this movie it definitely works more than just having like a guy in a screen tight green suit and purple leotard.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly.
Let me put
But
it to you
I
this way.
would like to see a mocap Green Goblin in the future in the MCU.
True, but let me throw this at you, right? So what we have, basically what we end up getting is passable. I will say, always say that about this movie. What we have is passable.
I have always loved the suit in this movie.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I've always loved the suit. I think
Randy,
it looks,
I'm kind of more on your side. It's like it's not exactly like comics accurate, but I don't really care about that. It's like I think in terms of just like visual, it pops. You know what I mean?
it pops, exactly. It pops.
I mean, what I care about, what
Details to it that make it memorable.
I mean, the important thing is it doesn't just come out of nowhere. The fact is, it's a flight suit. It's kind of what Oscorp has. Again, it does fit into the story, and it has like a primary color. Is that again, the old famous kind of greens with Spider-Man. We have like green being kind of the color of most of the Sinister Six are green. That being
And if you listen to the behind the scenes stuff, I think it was in I think it was the booklet that came with the new 3.5 box set they released recently. I think they talk about how they designed they paid a lot of attention to Goblin's mask, especially because Norman in the movie he collects African masks.
Yeah, I know they put that in the background. They wanted to again. The point is like there's an explanation. I gotta admit though, the African mask thing. Look, it passes and it works. I'm not offended by it because like some people are saying it's pure Power Rangers. I would disagree with that, but I have to admit though they're putting that African mask thing in just to cover themselves in the setting. They know there's no real good reason for the mask, and that's the only thing.
Actually, there was more to that. Someone was talking about this, and it might have been. Willem Dafoe, who's saying Oscorp was designing this suit to be a weapon of war, so they want to have the mask that strikes fear into their enemies. That's what the word was, but whether obviously I don't think that it's not actually.
That's the thing. What we have in the end movie that makes me not think that's where they're going with it. Saying, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying based on the evidence that we do have at the end result is that we see the pilot has that thing on his head, and the thing is it has the yellow eyes built into it, which implies that was as far as the design really went. You'd have that maybe a helmet on it, but again, I doubt it was. Again, the Goblin mask though, however, does have the same coating as the suit, so you might be on to something.
I still think as far as this adaptation goes, I think it's better not to be comic accurate in this case.
However, let's talk about the animatronic mask, though.
I think just to round that off, I think we can all agree that this is a lot better than the Amazing Spider-Man suit.
I don't know. It's a little complicated. If
you like it, that's fine. I'm just saying. I think I don't know. I personally think this one's a lot better. If you like it, it's fine though.
Well, I want to bring this up though with the mask. Saying you know about the original mask they were toying with. They were kind of mixing makeup with an animatronic mask that did look remarkable. It was going to be a little experimental, a little bit untested. They ended up going the safer route. It was kind of a solid mask at the end of the day. But again, that mask did look really remarkable. And again, I don't know if it would have worked, but it would have been impressive. And I've always wanted this with the Goblin mask, honestly. Because again, some people say, basically, if we ever do the Goblin again, chances are they're going to do the ultimate route, the Goblin, where it's going to be basically what you saw in the in Spider-Verse, essentially. It's kind of like the big giant kind of monstrous Green Goblin. That's essentially what Green Goblin is in the Ultimate Comics, where I've always wanted them to just go like basically take another stab at kind of a practical armor where again you have you basically kind of purple in between like the plating of the green and
Dragon take another stab. Kind of a low blow.
Come on, Normie, don't be a baby. Take another stab, will ya? Come on. Anyway, no seriousness. Seriously though, if they did another attempt at kind of a weaponized Goblin suit where you just have because again I do like the armor look, and that's why I have to give an Amazing Spider-Man's favorite. They took another stab at the Goblin suit.
Yeah.
But again, if they just kind of worked in some purple on top of that, because we've seen all the time kind of retrofit into the Marvel stuff, even with Mysterio for Far From Home so far. Again, it's kind of they're working in the classic look, but kind of more of an armored look.
Yeah.
And basically what I'd always recommend with Goblin that we kind of flirted with in Amazing Spider-Man, we didn't do nearly good enough is he injects him. He has the Goblin serum. With the Goblin serum, like, what if we did kind of the Kilgrave thing from Jessica Jones, where he has like green veins and everything? We don't go full monster on him, but he has like green veins. Maybe mutates his eyes in the yellow, or he has like kind of an Iron Man HUD thing built into some sunglasses or an eyepiece that gives him like the Goblin eyes with with the more accurately, he has like the purple helmet. He has like the purple hat being a helmet of some kind that allows him to.
And speaking of Iron Man, that's what they wanted to do with this original suit, but they didn't have the technology to make him look really, kind of robotic.
Sure, but you see what I'm saying though. You kind of like, I guess the better comparison might be like a Vulture thing, where again you have like the headpiece on there for the Goblin, but then you see the mouth and everything. What I'd recommend is you have green LED lights that would project, give him a green face. You could still work with the actor's natural features, Again, because everyone was saying like Defoe had such a naturally Goblin-like face. He went so far with it in the way he would. In the way we just embody the character. When again, of course, one scene in particular we'll get to. It's with all of that again. Just give him like green LED lights, and I think it would have looked. Again, that's how you can do the gun without getting too intrusive with the makeup. I think that will look cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Third act. Okay. Third act climax. Third act, I feel is a kind of a problem spot of the movie here, where. One, I think we go a little bit too much into the Raimi horror. And again, I like the Raimi touches, but that feels too much like that end. Basically, in the movie overall, especially in the third act, we do Spider-Man in the dark a little bit too much. We have Spider-Man in the dark, and especially like when he's getting into this fight, and I believe like an abandoned church of some kind or something when he's fighting the Goblin.
Technically, it's an abandoned smallpox hospital. It's actually a real place you can visit. I went there.
Really?
Yeah, I went there in February. It's an actual place. It looks exactly like it does in the movie.
Is it like safe to be in there?
Well, you can't go inside, but you can walk around it. It's out on Roosevelt Island on the very edge. But it's right there next to the Queensboro Bridge, and cool. Like in the movie.
Well, the point being, I don't know, that just feels a little too horror moving, like how we get all tattered and grayed and everything. It just, I don't know, something always felt a little bit too, like he brings like a freaking trident and everything. It just feels a little too hard, too Raimi
the trident that comes out of nowhere.
That's the thing. That's what I'm saying. So I've always had problems. That's like the main knock I've always had against the movie, where we get a little. Again, I know we're doing Goblin's Last Stand, which again, as I mentioned, has kind of always been in there from the start, and I love where we get with Goblin's Last Stand, which we'll get to. But again, I just feel tonally, just something feels a little off about it. And also with the third act and the grander sense of things, that's when the David Koepp writing gets a little formulaic. We do a lot of conveniencies in Act 3, where it's like, he's doing the sadistic choice. Like it plays again. It's kind of like the Goblin's costume in the movie, where it plays, but maybe not as well as it could have. It's like we're just, we're not. It's like he's getting a little formulaic with the dialogue in the third act there. Am I crazy?
Well, I think you're right. I think because of course it's stereotypical villain monologue where he ends up bringing on his own demise and giving Spider-Man too much time to consider what he's going to do next.
Yeah, it just gives a sense of like we're just racing to get to the last stand, the last bout between the two guys. We need something to kind of hold him over. We're also trying to do like the Gwen Stacy moment from the Goblin's Last Stand, but we can't have Gwen Stacy. We're going to do something kind of akin to that with like Mary Jane, or we're going to do something with a bridge.
Mm-hmm.
But it's at nighttime,
Actually, it's just a little fun fact here I was going to share. I think you're definitely right. I've always liked that bridge scene. I think it's really good. Really good. And I've always liked it. I guess that probably does kind of blind whether it actually works or not in my vision. Is his name David Koepp or David Koepp?
No, it's Koepp.
Koepp?
That's how Spielberg says it, so I'm going with it.
Okay. Actually, in his original script, in the treatment he had, they end up in that old hospital, and actually there's a bunch of the pumpkin bomb razors that go and they slice Spider-Man to ribbons, and Goblin actually has to tell them to stop. He tells them to stop two different times. Yeah, so I'm wondering how that would have looked in the movie. And I know he was actually trying to. There was a one line in the script, in his original script, where he's watching as Spider-Man's holding onto the tram and to the bridge, like being stretched out like Stretch Armstrong doll or something like that. And it says in the script that Goblin almost has pity on him, but decides to try and kill him anyways.
Yeah, where are those bits, man?
Yeah, I mean, the script's online if you want to go ahead and read it, but it's pretty cool.
It sounds interesting. It does. That sounds very interesting. I didn't know that. All right, let's see. As we mentioned, the teacher on the field trip, just like I mean, it could be their age. It's just like
Okay,
really.
to be
Like,
fair, I almost kind of count like those weird side characters as a pro in this movie.
I don't. Look. I'll admit it's not a problem. Teacher's not a problem. He does stand out years later. It's like some of the May doesn't hold up as well.
I mean, the guys on the bridge.
Like a sore thumb, and he stood out like in 2002.
Are you talking about the guys on the bridge?
I'm talking about the well, I was referring to the teacher, but I mean the guy. Let's talk about the guys on the bridge, though. I mean, like, yeah, the whole like, you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us.
Oh, I love that guy. That guy's iconic.
I love what that moment's going for.
With fucking New York.
The problem for me is that moment goes on a little too long. It's a good moment, and again, it's people going. It fits the story. Like everybody going to Spider-Man's defense for a bit there, and he's trying to save some children. He's trying to save children. What are you doing, messing with a guy like that? It's just like I just think the Goblin just sticks in the same place a little too long. I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how they hit Goblin, and he just sits there and looks at them while they chuck stuff at him. It's like he's thinking about what he's gonna do, and just decides not to kill them, I guess.
I mean, here's the thing. I mean, I love the moment. Like, it looks like Spider-Man's a goner in New Yorker. Hits him, and then they says the thing, and then they throw a bunch of stuff at him. But it's like just you need just the one hit and the statement. That's really all you need. Everything else is just we're just kind of like now we're just lingering to make sure. Okay, we buy Spider-Man. So again, now we're getting like the plotty things. Like now we need to buy time and get things in certain places. We need to have them save the people. So we do the iconic thing. The Goblin wraps him up and kind of drags him by the glider.
Yeah. Just a little wanted to share this. The kids in the tram and the basketball.
Yeah.
I found one of those jackets on eBay last year and I got it. It was the jacket and it came with the hat and the pants. One of the screen used costumes. It's really, really cool.
There is a big flaw with the Green Goblin in the movie, and I've been saving this up since we did the Spider-Man debate because I don't know if Sandy, I don't know if you know this or not. I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. Well, maybe a smidge. I literally had to write. I had to figure out every eventuality of the randomizer when we did that. So like I had like all the. I basically I kind of did detail on all the pros and cons for all the villains in all the Spider-Man movies. So basically whatever eventuality was going to come out, I would have had it at the ready. And point being. With the Green Goblin, I did find a big flaw in the movie with the Green Goblin.
What's that?
The Green Goblin, he gets his revenge, and he has no reason to do anything else in the movie because like he kills all the guys on the board.
Yep.
And it's just like, why is he still around? Like Spider-Man didn't stop him at all. It's just
I mean, I guess he tries to explain it in the rooftop scene where he acknowledges that he's more powerful than anyone else in the city, and they can I guess rule the city or something.
I mean, it's cool, but it really comes out of nowhere. It doesn't really. It is kind of out of left.
I've always given it the excuse that he's a psychopath and he's just not even thinking about what he's doing. He's just trying to kill Spider-Man.
I mean, it's kind of. I mean, we pretty much did earlier describe him as the Spider-Man's Joker, and why does Joker do what he does?
Well, sure, but again, we kind of gave this guy like a direct purpose, and now it's just like we didn't really have like a moment where he falls. With the Joker, it's like he falls in love with Batman. In this case, we don't have quite a moment where the Goblin falls in love with Spider-Man. But again, it's like, we don't have a moment of focus for that. It's just kind of like okay, well now it's this.
Keep in mind here, Norman took the serum. He wasn't expecting to become insane and get revenge. He took the serum because he wanted to keep his job.
Exactly,
and basically we well, I completed my job. I was like, oh, might as well just run the company now.
Well, yeah, and he once he became the Goblin, became insane. He thought, well, I might as well just destroy Quest Aerospace, those guys. And then I feel like I was kind of gonna be it after that. But then the board fired him, and he thought, well, what am I gonna do? Oh wait, I'm the Goblin. I can just kill these guys too.
Yep.
So then he went to the parade, killed them, and then Spider-Man comes in. That opens up this whole other avenue in his mind, and he's just like, okay, I've got to do something about this. So I don't know. I was getting an excuse. He's crazy.
All right. Look,
But
I don't want
right.
to erase the movie, so I'll allow it. Like I have any power here.
But I thought about that too, Dragon. You're absolutely right. There is really technically no reason if you really want to make some sense of it. There's no reason for him to do what he's doing.
All right. As Tiki mentioned, the high school effect of like, you give it a pass, but it's like.
And again, I don't necessarily consider that a flaw because I feel like it's just kind of a charming sign of the times.
Yeah, it was absolutely of the times. You're right. I think we overplayed Mary Jane's home life. We're getting really like, it's an abusive father. Do you get it?
You know what I want to do now?
She has a sad life.
Every time I see that scene, I always just want to see. I'm just gonna.
You're trash. You'll always be trash.
He's wearing a wife beater. Get it?
I'm gonna just want to see Cusco pause the movie and say, "Okay, see what's happening here? Just don't forget that. Don't forget that." And just resumes.
Elfman, do you have the tiny violins? Get them at the ready. All right. Okay. We got to talk about the $3,000.
The $3,000.
$3,000. We got to talk about the $3,000. Again,
guys, I gotta tell you, my energy is like really kind of slipping here. So like we've been going on. It feels like we've been going on this pros and cons forever. So let's hurry up through this. All right.
All right. Okay, man.
All right. Okay, real quick.
I'm just like I know. I still need to get through my favorite moments. So.
All right. Well, we can make that pretty quick, I think.
All right.
The last thing, then, just point being like $3,000. He takes him down 2 minutes, gets $100. Come on, that's all I'll say.
I really always felt the same way. I think that guy had betted on Bonesaw, and he was angry that he lost.
Maybe, but again,
that's what it was.
Maybe that's it. All right, so let's move on to favorite moments. Tiki, why don't you start off?
So speaking of which, Bonesaw is ready.
And of course, you have Bruce Campbell in there.
Yeah, I mean, this is just an iconic wrestling scene. Like Bruce Campbell is just living it up as the as the classic kind of like wrestling announcer. Like, what's your name, kid? The Human Spider. The Human Spider. That sucks. And now welcoming the Amazing Spider-Man.
Campbell
does name Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Campbell does what Campbell does.
Joseph Campbell gives a thumbs up to Bruce Campbell.
And then, of course, we get the whole, one of your favorite moments, Ezra, the whole, like, cage? I didn't know this was a cage.
hey, unlock the thing.
And I gotta tell you guys, this whole thing, it's like, it's just framed in such a silly, like, it almost kind of reminds me of, like, the Joel Schumacher neon gangs in a way, where it's just like this whole like underground society where it's just like, yeah, just kick his ass, like
give him the chair.
It's snuff entertainment in a way.
Doesn't the lady give him a golf club?
Something like that. Yeah, exactly.
I thought it was a crowbar, but no, you're right. It's like a golf club or something.
And I don't know, man. This whole scene is just, and then of course we get to see Spidey use his spider senses, and we actually get to see the acrobatic version. And it's just such a fun scene. Bruce Campbell's great. Randy Savage might have the most memorable moment of the whole movie. Yeah.
Hey, Freak Show! You're going nowhere. I got you for 3 minutes. 3 minutes of playtime.
Oh God.
Macho Man Randy Savage.
Okay, and this will go by quick, but we were talking about transitions. We mentioned a really good one with the rah, but the best one in this movie, which introduces one of the best characters and the best casting choice of the whole film, is the hard cut after the montage to dun dun. Who is Spider-Man? He's a menace.
Oh, man.
Guys, that character introduction, like J. Jonah, the hard cut to J. Jonah Jameson holding up the Who is Spider-Man Daily Bugle, lowering it. There he is. It's just, that is iconic, man. That I feel like I'm saying the word iconic way too much in this podcast. I apologize, but
you're right. It's a perfect introduction.
I mean, it's just like, I will never forget that moment in the theater, because I was just like, I didn't even know if JJJ was going to be in this movie. You know, like, I didn't follow the trailers that closely. There was no Twitter back then, or movie talk, or movie blogs. I didn't know much about the casting. So to not only see one of my favorite characters from the comics, but to see him represented right from the very get-go, right from the word go, so perfectly. So like they just absolutely captured the look of him. They captured the cadence of him. They captured the mannerisms of him. It's just a stunning performance. And like I said, I love that. I just absolutely love that hard cut element that we get to him. It's like, I feel like the hard cut is meant to like represent like, yeah, and here comes trouble, like, duh, duh, here comes JJJ. Oh boy. What are we going to do now?
J. Jonah Jameson made J.K. Simmons a household name without a doubt.
He did. He really did.
So much that he even reprised his role in future things.
Yep.
Give me 1 second. Let me.
Should I go into mine now, Tiki?
No, hold on. Let me, damn it, I can't find the sound clip. But the one thing I want to point out though is that my sister and I used to rewind and fast forward the DVD, because the transition happens at a scene change, and so we'd press, we go back a scene and we'd be like, da-da, who is Spider-Man? He's a menace. Da-da, who is Spider-Man? He's a menace. Da-da. Really fun, childhood nostalgia there with my sister. Just, we love that moment, that hard cut so much. Basically, we just love the music, the dramatic music sting right at the beginning.
Yeah, it's that sting. It's
so yeah, so those are my moments, guys. All right.
Awesome.
Chronologically, I think I should technically go next.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, real quick, I'm just going to try to abbreviate them. So I have basically the two big Uncle Ben scenes. So I have the car scene, where basically we have it dropped, with great power comes great responsibility. One of the iconic lines, and the big thing I want to highlight with great power comes great responsibility is the fact that, again, classically in the comics, it was kind of the big, with great power there must also come great responsibility in the fuller version of the quote. That all comes at the end. That's Spider-Man coining that phrase. Mm-hmm. We redefined it as the way we think about it today, and the connection to Uncle Ben, like, it all stems from this movie. It all stems from that powerful words by Cliff Robertson. With this car scene, the car scene also it's even more heartbreaking than you remember it to be, because again, it's like this is the whole. Especially, I should have brought this up when we did the Father's Day thing, the father figure thing.
Right,
It's the fact that he literally calls him out like, you're not my father, and that whole thing. I'm not trying to say. Like,
yeah, you're absolutely right, Dragon. That is heartbreaking. The fact that one of the last things that Peter says to him is just something like that, something so cutting.
And I love the regret that's on Peter's face. Uncle Ben just rolls with it, and he leaves, and it's just this unresolved thing between the two of them that Peter's never going to be able to tape it. They do get a final moment, which I'm going to get to in a millisecond here, but it's but I love it in a way, in the grand sense of things. He's kind of passing the burden of the Parker luck and kind of that moral, again, like the last big lesson Uncle Ben has to impart on Peter Parker is this, with great power comes great responsibility, because he saw that he was going down a path of being kind of this cocksure, sort of like, again, like a guy coasting on his powers, again, doing the wrestling thing without knowing any of that, just kind of knowing that, Peter has the potential of going down the wrong path here. So again, he gives him this, he just gives him that piece of advice that will be the moral compass for the hero. Again, he kind of plants the seed for Spider-Man in that moment. And again, and also it redefines the context of great power in a big way that still has never changed. And whenever we think of great power, we always think of that before. It's like what the original comic was, where, he goes home, he finds that Uncle Ben was murdered, and again, and later on finds out, it was the same guy. Now it's just even more Peter's fault. So speaking of which,
it's not my problem.
Not my problem. So Uncle Ben's death. Oh my goodness, this is the most emotional scene for me, and I think for many people in the movie.
Oh yeah, man. This is definitely like This got to me more than Mufasa did, dude.
Oh, this look for me. It kicks the crap out of Mufasa's the power of this moment here. I mean, Mufasa's a big deal. Don't get me wrong. This thing right here. Oh my goodness, especially every time you rewatch, it gets even more and more like
Peter.
It's the fact that he. Again, this is what I'm talking about. This is where this kind of pairs with the other thing I was talking about, the redefining great power. Because again, now it's so much more personal than it ever has been in the history of Spider-Man, where with the carjacking was an ingenious. I meant to mention this with the pros, and I just now realized the whole day I was thinking, what did I forget to put in pros? And I now figured it out just now. Whereas, like again, we changed up certain things that have kind of redefined Spider-Man. This is one of those moments here where again we redefined Spider-Man with making a change. Like it was a carjacking right after right after the wrestling thing. It wasn't like a delayed response. It wasn't just after the robbery. It was like the fact that it was the carjacking, and he was expecting Uncle Ben to pick him up.
And the fact that Peter allowed that to happen because he let the guy get away out of spite.
Absolutely. It's just it's flawless dramatic storytelling, and the fact that he comes by, and again we gave him this moment that we've never given Spider-Man before until this movie, where he gets like a final moment with Uncle Ben, where Uncle Ben is just on there, scared, has no idea what's going on, and he says, "Peter," and that's the last word. Peter, when he's trying to muster any other words, and he dies right in front of Peter. Like that makes that moment all the more personal, because before it was just the guilt weighing on Peter Parker, but now it's the guilt and that final moment. Like the minute the hand goes limp and we have that Danny Elfman music, it swells, and then it just drowns out, and then it plays, and we see the heroic, like the determination in Peter's eyes. We just see one of Tobey Maguire's finest moments here. Where he's emotionally devastated, and then he hears like on the police scanner on the radio, like he reports of where the carjacker's gone. He leaves Uncle Ben there, but again, it's so powerful, man.
And those final words, those final words, Uncle Ben, I'm here, Uncle Ben, and then hand goes limp.
Yes, it's just again the score when that hand goes limp, it chills every time. It just debatably the most powerful moment in the entire film. Possibly I couldn't say possibly Troy's, because there's some great moments in Spider-Man 2, but still one of the most riveting moments of the Sam Raimi trilogy, to say the least.
Absolutely. All right, it's my turn now.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, my first one is the mirror scene between Goblin and Norman, and this scene was actually where Danny Elfman got the theme from. If you go and you look at the DVD bonus features, he says that he created that theme from this scene, which makes total sense. I mean, this is where we hear the theme in its full, uninterrupted composition. And I think it's really, really great. I think the art direction in this scene is really wonderful. The colors are really kind of like Norman's robe is really bizarre looking, but it works in the same way. You have all those great African masks around his apartment or his penthouse. These creepy African masks.
Same mansion from Smallville, by the way.
Is it?
That's what I heard.
Interesting. And then, of course, we hear the laugh, which we get in the other two movies as well, or I think just the second one, maybe. That evil laughter echoing throughout the hallways upstairs. But it's really great. It's really great because it pays off in the second movie again with the laughter and echoing inside the house, and also because, and this is the mirror that his whole Goblin persona is literally behind. So it's kind of a double meaning there, and it's really great because it captures Dafoe's performance as the Goblin without the mask or anything. It's just, I think this is the only place where it's the only scene where he's not wearing the mask and he's the Goblin. If you're not counting the Thanksgiving bit where he gets upset at Harry, but it's really wonderful because Dafoe's performance and a myriad of other reasons. But the next scene I have up here is the Queensboro Bridge fight. And this is, of course, this is an absolutely real bridge. I went there in February. I went to the smallpox hospital. the bridge looks the exact same it does in the movie. You can line up all the different beams and the walkway and everything. It's all actually there. And the tram is still there as well. They updated the tram itself, but the tram station is the exact same. If you look in the towers, they're exact same. It's really fascinating. And again, just the way this scene flows, I think, because this is where Spider-Man has to make that choice. What's he going to do? Is he going to save the kids, which are, I guess, is probably an allegory for the city, or is he going to save Mary Jane, which is, you know, the love of his life? So it's this big choice. It's this big decision he has to make, and of course we know what happens, and the city ends up respecting what he does, and they take his side, and just leads up for the next two movies where the city absolutely loves him. It's really, I think this is one of the best scenes in the movie, because, you know, I feel like in the parade scene, Goblin, he's kind of goofy, you know. Well, meet again, Spider-Man. It's really comic book-esque. And once we get to this scene, he's really mean. I guess mean is an understatement. Yeah, he's straight up, you know, axe murder. He's gonna kill you. He's not gonna think twice about it. Anyways, that's just coming from a character arc point of view. Yeah, those are my two scenes. Jacob?
Okay, I mean, I guess I'll try and keep mine short and sweet here. My first scene is the dinner scene, especially specifically the Thanksgiving scene where with Harry, Norman, Peter, and everyone else in there.
Can you all agree the food looks really good in that scene? The food just looks amazing.
I heard it smelled terrible though.
Really?
Yeah, I heard like the turkey was like, I heard like the stuff. Yeah, I heard it was like the stuffing was terrible smelling, or like whatever the thing Norman was trying to sample. I heard like poor Defoe. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm drifting off. Go on.
Mainly because like the overall tension in that scene. You know, like this is right around the blood scene, like where sees the blood dripping.
Oh yeah.
And just the overall, mainly because of the overall tension in that scene. It's like you could just cut the tension in the knife. Like you could just tell that Norman's suspecting something.
Yeah.
And just
the Goblin's suspecting something.
Yep, he's pretty much suspecting something at that point. It's just like, I think I know he's Spider-Man. Basically, it proves it to be true. So
and yeah, I think what it's trying to, because Norman, he looks legitimately shocked when Peter pulls his sleeve back. He looks legitimately shocked, not like he's expecting it. So I think the Goblin or Norman probably thinks that Spider-Man followed him there and he was inside the room. Not that he's Peter Parker, that's just it's Spider-Man who followed him there. That's what I've always thought, because he looks legitimately, you know, shocked. Again, he looks terrified when Peter pulls back his sleeve. And I'm sorry, I don't know, Jacob. I'm sorry.
No, I mean that's about it for that scene. Just like basically because like the way that scene is how that scene put together is.
Yeah. And
my next scene is Goblin's death. basically like the scene does end quickly and he does impale himself. It's like basically it's just like you can see Norman, not just the Goblin, in his final moments.
Yeah,
and the Goblin pretending to be Norman too, which is kind of creepy.
Well, there's also that.
Creepy, yeah.
Yeah, but it's saying, continuing the one phrase that's been said that throughout the entire movie: "Don't tell Harry."
And you can hear, yeah, exactly. Actually, a funny story about that line there. I don't think that was in the original script because I'm not sure where I heard this, but I know this is what happened. Undoubtedly, 100%. Is that they filmed that scene and Willem Dafoe left to go do a TV show where he had to shave his head, and so they figured out they wanted him to say that line, so they had to reshoot that specific shot, I guess, or that scene. So he had to come back and he had to put this fake hair on, which is why.
Oh, that's right. That happened.
Yeah,
you're right.
That's why his hair looks so different.
Yep.
But it is great.
Last moment of humanity from Norman Osborn is a big moment.
Exactly.
Don't tell Harry. The one time he really legitimately cared about Harry Osborn in his last moments there is really
He doesn't want his son to realize his horrible secret. Yeah, exactly.
And my scene extends to the point where Spider-Man actually takes him home.
Yep.
It's kind of a plot hole there because I'm wondering how does Spider-Man get his glider home, because we see it in the second one. How does he get the glider home? How does he clean up Osborn? How does he get him out of the suit? I mean,
well, one, we don't want to see him take him out of the suit and everything, but I think the fact of the matter is I think it's Bernard. Bernard does it all,
Well, we see Spider-Man carry Norman Osborn's body, in the blanket. So I'm wondering how that all works out.
Kind of webbed it up and just kind of left it I guess in the gut. But yeah, you're right. Doesn't have the gut. Okay, fine. It's a plot hole. Yeah, he wraps it up. I want to say puts it next to the garbage or something. But Bernard has to find it to put it in the lair. I don't know.
It doesn't.
Okay, well, look, we're putting a pin in Bernard. Bernard is going to be pivotal later.
Okay. The fact of the matter is, I think the actual answer is he built a spare glider and he has the spare glider in the lair, and just Spider-Man's left it where. I think that's the actual answer for actually entertaining.
Well, I'm just gonna have to nitpicking about that because the entire idea behind the Goblin suit and the glider was that it was the prototype, and I think they actually say that in the movie. It's the prototype stuff.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's a plot hole. But again, what you were saying before is that when he's pretending to be
plot hole.
You've said more about my moment than I have.
Well, I'm just gonna say this one thing. I'm sorry. When Dragon said that the goblins pretend to be Norman, you can hear it in his voice. His voice shifts. It's really creepy, right? Go ahead, Jacob. I keep interrupting you.
Well, I mean, you pretty much said all I wanted to say about it.
Yeah.
There's nothing else you want to say?
No, I mean, basically, it's how it basically cements the whole responsibility and everything. Harry needed to know, but it ended up cementing his hatred for Spider-Man.
Oh, I never talked about that. I was talking about the plot hole.
I know, but that's basically the only other thing I wanted to say.
Okay. Yeah, all right.
All right. Okay, so finally, at long last, gentlemen, after 2.5 hours of podcasting, we come to the final thoughts. What's your last word on this?
I stand where I've always stood. This is a really great. It's a staple in cinema history, and it's a perfect popcorn movie. The story is great. The casting is terrific. It's a modern day classic.
Sam Raimi was the perfect choice.
Yeah, exactly, and it's also novelty, like I think Dragon said earlier, or Tiki said it. He said, I don't know, it's novelty.
It's this generation's Richard Donner Superman. I really feel like it's definitely responsible for opening the floodgates and sort of setting the precedent for the modern day blockbuster.
I think this
come along and perfected the formula, but this is the formula.
Yeah, I think this and Tim Burton's Batman, because that was a huge movie too.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
And yeah,
which inspired the animated series.
I am excited to check out Spider-Man 2, but like I said, this is the one that I had on Sandy. I'll do you one better. Well, no, I had the DVD. I'm sorry, but this is the one where I had it on DVD and I watched it over and over and over again. It was maybe one of the last movies from my young years, my pre-teen years, that I would just kind of watch every single day. I was still kind of in that mindset. I literally, there was a period of time where this was unquestionably the greatest movie of all time in my mind.
Oh, I was the same way, man. I had my Green Goblin action figure, and I watched the movie and act out what was happening in the movie. Oh man.
You showed us your Fig Goblin figure earlier.
Oh yeah, the bobblehead.
Yep.
Right. I kind of lost track. Who else has to do final thoughts?
Jacob.
All right. Well, I mean, I pretty much said my piece throughout the entire movie. I mean, it's a movie that through minor ups and downs, it's still, like I said, it sets the precedent for superhero genre, superhero movies, and the modern day blockbuster to come. It's definitely reached cult status at this point. It's a big name cult film, and basically it could have gone wrong in many ways, but it also turned out to be one of the modern defined definition of the superhero genre. And basically, we can say that modern movie making would not be the same without Spider-Man.
Yeah, one of the best of the decade for sure.
Oh
I
yeah.
guess that brings it to me then. This film, I think as we're all very on the same page here. This film was the next generation Donner Superman. So many of us, and again, it has it's carried us. Basically, I think the Spider-Man, I think the Raimi trilogy in this movie have kind of carried us till the age of the MCU. It really kind of carried us and kind of I think just kind of defined the best.
MCU.
Yeah, the age of the MCU really just kind of like satiate us until that point in terms of, I mean, that, of course, you had the Nolan films, but by the same token, the Nolan films are kind of synonymous with the kind of the period of the MCU. So I'm just kind of like, before all that point. I know we have Batman Begins, let's not muddy the waters. Point being, this movie, look, it's not perfect, but it is an everlasting classic, and that's worth something. I mean, I remember famously, Stan Lee would always tell this wonderful story where Bob Kane would tease him mercilessly. He would tease poor Stan Lee mercilessly about the original blockbuster in Batman '89. Of course, Bob Kane would never live to see Spider-Man's success. In that, yes, but Batman came first. But again, this film reflects that creative spark.
Ironically, both were composed by Danny Elfman.
Yes, ironically enough. So, I guess in closing, this film reflects that creative spark, that lit Marvel cinematic flame. I mean, Blade and the X-Men, they may have been like the rocks or the matchbook, if you will. But this movie, again, this was the spark that kind of lit the flame for all else that follows.
Well,
this film does have a
I honestly, I'd say that Blade and X-Men was the spark, and this was the flame. This is the burning flame that just ignited it.
I mean, if you want to look at it like this is the spark that then gets us the flame of Spider-Man 2 and so on and so forth.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Okay.
Killing my analogy there, Sandy, but it's.
I mean, yes, X-Men did come first, but this kind of, and technically so did Blade and other movies like that. And Blade 2 is still very good.
Yes, just taking all the ambiance out of this, guys.
My point, what I was adding on to what you're saying, like, this is arguably the movie that propelled the superhero genre into the big name it is today. It's like, I mean, this is the movie that started the fire,
precisely. It lit the fire that kind of set out the smoke signal for all to come. That's what there we go.
Make a Star Wars joke here, but I'm going to resist the temptation.
Yes. Point being, we all love the Raimi. We're all deep into the Raimi trilogy here. This is the end of the first chapter. More to come.
All right. Okay, so thank you guys so much for joining us. Next time on this, this unofficial retrospective. I say unofficial because we never really gave it a proper title. We're just like, all right, it's retrospective podcast. So next time on our Spider-Man retrospective, we are going to be getting into the question of, is Spider-Man 2 a GOAT? As in, is Spider-Man 2, does Spider-Man 2 still hold up as a greatest of all time superhero movie? And I am really looking forward to finding out. I'm pretty sure the answer is yes, but we'll see. Maybe my views have changed. I very famously, I feel like I was one of the people on the internet who was very vocal about Homecoming being just like, I mean, this is fine, but it's not nearly as good as 2. So we'll definitely see how that shakes out. And in the meantime, folks, don't forget that Bonesaw is ready.
Out, am I?
Out of your mind, Gavi.
Hey, you, be quiet.
Who is Spider-Man? He's a menace.
He's a menace.
With power comes great responsibility.